Hey guys, Sausage here. Released onto Steam on December 4th, 2024, Battleshapers is an action-packed sci-fi FPS roguelite in which you shoot and smash your way through swarms of corrupt robots. Wield powerful weapons, abilities, and game-changing new powers stolen from ruthless overlords. Before we continue with the review, I want to preface this by saying I received this product for free. To be clear, the developer sent me a free Steam key. I did not purchase this game. With that out of the way, let's start the review. First, let's talk about the story. You play as Ada, a Shaper who has been awakened after evil Shaper overlords have taken over the city of New Elysium. Your job is to fight through their corrupted robots and defeat them to save the city of New Elysium. This story is minimal, and for a game like this, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Not every game needs depth. Some games are more about the gameplay than the story, and this is one of those games. The devs included a story just to give the player some reason to want to fight through the hordes, but at the end of the day, the story ultimately takes a backseat to the combat, and that's okay. As you play, you'll find little flash drive looking things that say their lore, but unfortunately, as far as I can tell, they're just little bits of dialogue Ada will have with her companion Mimo, or maybe even the bosses. While I love the idea of finding these little tidbits of lore, what annoys me about this is that there is no lore tab. If the devs were going to add these little flash drives of lore, I wish they would have introduced a lore tab feature. This would have added another layer of storytelling to the game and something for the player to do when they want to take a break from fighting enemies. From a storytelling perspective, this was a massive misstep. Next, let's talk about the graphics. I've only played Overwatch a couple of times, but I was getting strong vibes from that game. However, that's really where the comparisons stop, as this game is its own thing, especially when it comes to the gameplay. As for the graphics though, it's futuristic and robotic while also looking cartoony. Everything is bright, colorful, and extremely crisp. Not once did I walk into a room of any of these levels and dislike what I saw. Even items at a distance look good. If these items are rendered at a lower polygon count, then I can't even notice. One small issue I ran into though was occasionally my frames would drop when there were a lot of enemies and a lot of explosions on screen. However, I blame my PC and my recording software for that rather than the game. It isn't the game's fault I am pushing my PC so hard. That said though, if you have a PC on the weaker side, you may experience some of these issues, but that's nothing that can't be fixed in the settings menu. Just try the game out and adjust as necessary. Now for the soundtrack. Just like the story, the soundtrack takes a back seat in this game, but again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. The music in this game is good, but it's not necessarily attention grabbing. I mean what I'm about to say with all due respect, but the music in this game is like the bass player in a band. I know, the butt of the joke is that bass players add zero value to the music, but go ahead and listen to music without the bass and then come talk to me. Just like a bass player, you don't notice it until it's not there. When I'm fighting enemies, I'm not paying attention to the music and I don't even hear it, honestly. But once the fighting is over, I remember, oh yeah, there's music, and that music is actually pretty good. This game has incredible background music, and I mean that as a compliment. Unfortunately, the background music is still just background music. When you play Doom, that music is in your face and it's not afraid to remind you. This music does the complete opposite, and while that isn't a bad thing, for some people, they may be a little bit disappointed. As for the most important topic, the gameplay. The gameplay is extremely solid. Battleshapers feels almost like RoboQuest meets Doom, and even then that's not quite accurate, as Battleshapers has its own vibe. While there were some weapons and abilities I didn't care for, I wouldn't have any problem with them if they were my only option. In terms of weapons, you have everything from SMGs, to assault rifles, to shotguns, to grenade launchers, to even throwing hammers. These weapons even have different levels and different rarities, which basically just means a slight buff to their stats. On top of that, the weapons can even have modifiers that grant you different perks, such as doing extra damage with a different damage type, increasing crit chance, or even my personal favorite, a perk that allows you to do an extra 10% damage for every 100 credits you have, up to a 200% damage bonus. Then there are the different abilities, such as throwing a stun grenade, a pulse grenade, or even one that allows you to jump up in the air, and when you strike the ground, you send a wave of fire around you that will burn enemies. These abilities also have tier levels, rarities, and modifiers as well. You can sort of think of these abilities more like utilities, since they can be easily swapped and modified. As for the credits I mentioned earlier, these can be spent in a handful of different ways, but the most common are the shops you see twice throughout the levels. Each level has 2 different floors, and at the end of each floor you will come across a shop that will offer you 3 items that you can purchase with your credits. Occasionally, the shop will offer you health, but for the most part, they offer a weapon, an ability, and a minor core enhancement. What is a minor core enhancement? Well, your character is named Ada, and she is a Shaper. Ada and the evil Shaper overlords all have something called a core. These cores allow for different abilities. These abilities can then be boosted or augmented in small ways with minor core enhancements. These enhancements do everything from increasing reload speed when you dash to allowing rapid fire after 5 precision shots on an enemy. On top of that, you can also gain major core enhancements, which are like the minor enhancements, just more potent and powerful. Then you can also get hacker enhancements after defeating a boss, which will do anything from introducing a flat yet substantial damage increase to a damage element type such as kinetic, arc, solar, or vibro, or you can get a hacker enhancement that gives you extra credits when you start a level or defeat an enemy. To take a step back to the bosses and different core types, you start the game with your own core, but as you defeat the bosses you can unlock their core, which there are a total of 3, 1 for each boss. These boss cores then give you different abilities in relation to the bosses you acquired them from. My favorite being the arc core that drops from the Volt Colossus. That core gives me the ability to throw a grenade that creates a bubble of arc energy, and enemies within that bubble take arc damage. As you continue to play and defeat the bosses over and over, you will then level up the cores, which then unlock more perks. These cores and perks can also be modified with the minor core enhancements. For example, the arc bubble ability I can grab a minor core enhancement that causes the bubble to form around the character, Ada, rather than being a grenade. Or another enhancement says the bubbles grow in size as they sit. Battleshapers has an incredibly well thought out and balanced gameplay with many different skills and abilities that allow for near countless forms of combinations and build crafting. That was all of the good I had to say about Battleshapers, but now it's time for the critiques. My biggest critique is the bird-themed boss, Winged Magistrate. This boss felt exponentially more difficult than the other 2 bosses. I am not sure if it's a balancing issue on the dev's end or if I was doing something wrong on my end, but it doesn't change the experience I had. Some of the enemies, including this boss, have attacks that almost feel like they're not targeted at you, but rather where the game thinks you'll be. While that makes sense and I'm not mad about that, what's annoying about these attacks is that they can occasionally happen quite quickly, which requires quick reaction times and course correcting, which again is fine, but if there are multiple attacks happening at once, it almost feels overwhelming. One such attack is a whirlwind type attack that the bird boss throws at you. This attack is so quick, if you blink, you'll practically miss it. The second attack is that this boss will spawn a handful of tornadoes. This attack does show the path the tornadoes will take, but these are also a bit quick. When you have 5 or more tornadoes heading towards you, plus the whirlwind attack, it's almost impossible to get out of it without taking damage at least once, and being a boss, a single attack can be potentially devastating. Next is the player progression. I had a great time playing up until about the 10-hour mark. At that point, the progression of the game felt like it was starting to slow down, plateau, and stagnate. However, that did change around the 14-hour mark because at that point I had reached the 4th and final boss of the game. Unfortunately, I died to this boss, but at least now I could see the light at the end of the tunnel and I became motivated to finish the game. Regardless, there was still a dip or a lull in gameplay between 10 and 14 hours. I wasn't progressing as quickly as I was before, and even though I was still unlocking new weapons and abilities, I didn't have the credits to unlock all of them, so it just felt like I had so much left to do and unlock while not having the means to do so. The lack of currency to upgrade your character stings even more when you realize each run takes 1 to 2 hours to complete, even when playing casually. I say casual, yet this game does actually take time, commitment, and skill to complete. What I mean is, I did not beat the 4th and final boss of Battleshapers until 18 hours into the game with something like 20 runs attempted. Each run, assuming you make it to the final boss, will take an hour or 2. After beating the game, there is some replayability as you can now rerun the game again, but this time with modifiers that up the difficulty while also rewarding you different rewards so long as you complete the whole run and defeat the 4th boss again. The issue here, if you can tell, is that the game takes an hour or 2 to beat casually. How much longer will these runs be on higher difficulties, and does this time and effort justify the reward? To some degree, that is a personal preference, and unfortunately, you cannot see what the rewards are, just that there are 3 different tiers, so at a minimum, this game will take another 3 to 6 hours to complete and unlock the rewards. I can speculate what some of these rewards may be due to the icons, such as weapons, abilities, and trophies, but will that make the new challenge mode worth it? Again, that is a personal preference. How much grinding and punishment do you want to put yourself through, especially if you don't know what the rewards might be? The last two things I want to mention about my gameplay critiques are the trophy room and the lack of ability to vault over ledges or double jumping. These mechanics to vault or double jump might be difficult to implement as that requires actual coding, but ultimately these are extremely minor critiques. I am just saying I want those mechanics from a place of greed rather than from a negative gameplay experience. As for the trophy room, this is a nice addition to the game as you can see certain challenges or achievements you have completed or unlocked, and you get a nice shiny trophy to show off your accomplishment. My critique here is that as far as I know, this trophy room does absolutely nothing for you except to give you a nice digital trophy to look at. What would be nice is if the devs included some sort of perk bonus after unlocking these achievements, such as a static boost to damage output, an extra weapon, ability, or minor core to pick from after clearing a room, an extra modifier slot for your weapons, or something along those lines. Instead, we just get trophies that serve absolutely no purpose. Again, maybe I'm saying that from a place of greed, but the trophy room just seems like it adds little to no value to the game. Lastly, the price tag. Battleshapers is currently sitting at $25 US. Not a horribly steep price tag, especially if you put in the hours to beat the game like I did. It took me 18 hours to beat this game, and of course, your mileage may vary. After you beat the fourth and final boss, there is some replayability to this game, as you can add modifiers to make it more challenging and in turn earn more rewards, but is the time worth it? What I mean is, I ran this game 20 times in the course of 18 hours just to beat the base game. How many more times will it take to complete this on harder difficulties, and is it worth it? Will it take me 6 more hours, or will it take me another 18? Is this game worth running 40 times? The game is good, but there is no indication of different enemy variety or different levels. You can probably unlock more weapons and abilities, but will they be varied enough to justify the time? I know I just covered this, but I think it's important to note again because not only do I wonder what the rewards are, but will those rewards outweigh the time spent trying to earn them? With all of that said, I give Battleshapers a rating of 7.4 sausages out of 10. The story is short, sweet, simple, and average. While that might sound like an insult, I mean everything but. Not every game needs deep lore. Not every game needs a deep story. Battleshapers sets the tone and then lets it take a backseat so the combat can shine. Battleshapers does offer lore collectibles that you can find while you play, but unfortunately these pieces of lore are only shown through dialogue. What the developers should have done was introduced a lore tab that allows the player to go and read the collected lore anytime they want. This was a massive misstep that for the life of me, I just cannot understand. The graphics look great as it's almost cartoony, it's colorful, and it's futuristic and robotic. There is little to no graphical rendering as well. The only downside is that occasionally the frames can drop if there are too many enemies or explosions on screen, but I personally take that as a point of pride that I could manage to do that rather than pointing blame at the developers. The soundtrack is pretty good too, in that it has fast-paced rock music playing during the fights, but then transitions back to calm music once you're out of combat. The music is perfect background music in that it sounds great, but you don't really notice it until you're actively listening for it. That might be disappointing for some, but I'd rather have good background music than terrible music that is in my face and won't go away. The gameplay has a lot going on, but overall, it's pretty solid. It's an FPS through and through with fun and creative weapons, abilities, and modifiers that allow near limitless customization. Unfortunately, the game is not perfect in that it becomes extremely grindy after about the 10-hour mark. There is a new set of challenges to complete after beating the final boss that I myself am not sure is worth the time and effort. I personally do not like the bird-themed boss, the trophy room seems pretty pointless, and lastly, I wish there was a vaulting and double jump mechanic, but that's just me saying this from a place of greed rather than being a gameplay issue. As for the price, it costs $25 and you'll get 18 hours out of just the base game, but you can definitely put in more hours if you want to complete the end game challenges. However, I myself don't know if that's justified, as it took me 18 hours and 20 runs to complete the base game, and how many more for the rewards. I myself just don't know if I care enough for that. And that's my review of Battleshapers. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, so consider following me on that platform as well. I also have a Discord server too, where I post all of my videos and all of my streams, not to mention subscribers and other content creators can come hang out, talk, share memes, play games together, and even look for others to collab with. I'll drop a link for everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Released by Continue Games onto Steam on July 23rd, 2024, Midnight Ramen is a visual novel where you serve ramen to late-night customers, listen to their troubles, and help them however you can. But, as the bowls of ramen are cooked and served, troubles begin to brew in your own life as well. Before we start the review, I want to preface this by saying I received this product for free. To be clear, I did not purchase this game. The developer sent me a free Steam key. With that out of the way, let's start the review. The first thing I want to cover is the story. I want to get this out there before I say anything else. Midnight Ramen explicitly states they took inspiration from Coffee Talk for their game on their Steam page. While I don't want to compare Midnight Ramen to Coffee Talk is basically the gold standard when it comes to visual novels. So, I'm not comparing these two games to put Midnight Ramen down, but rather to see how it holds up against people's expectations. Anyway, while I hate to do it, I can't really say too much about the story of Midnight Ramen either, because after about 45 minutes to an hour into the game drops a massive bombshell that if I were to discuss it, it'd spoil a lot of the other 4 to 5 hours of gameplay. What I can say is this: you play as a 16-year-old girl named Homura, and you run a third shift midnight to sunrise ramen shop. Each night, you serve a handful of different patrons different meals, such as a variety of different ramens, assortment of drinks, and side dishes. Unfortunately, that's all I can really say about the story without giving away spoilers. I will mention though, I was gifted this game, and when I got it, I kinda sorta skimmed through the Steam page and thought it looked cartoonish and that I'd get around to it when I got around to it. What I missed was this trigger warning. This warning is not a joke. I found it emotionally difficult to finish the second half of the game due to these themes. While it was emotionally difficult to finish this game, that just goes to show how fantastic the writing of the game was. While Midnight Ramen took inspiration from Coffee Talk in terms of gameplay and storytelling, Midnight Ramen carved their own path in this niche that deserves to be respected and appreciated. Coffee Talk has a fantastic story, but ultimately, the characters and their problems are pretty minor compared to Midnight Ramen. In Coffee Talk, their issues pertain to problems at work or with relationships, while Midnight Ramen has a trigger warning about death and loss. The stark contrast between both themes of storytelling should speak for itself. While the game is emotionally heavy, in no way do I regret experiencing this storytelling to any degree. As for the art, you can tell a lot of time and effort went into making all the characters and all the different assets. In fact, my favorite art in the entire game is at the start of each night with the lanterns and the food ingredients. This art might not be everyone's cup of tea, but this art can definitely be considered cozy to the right person. The characters are clearly anime themed, and again, while that might not be everyone's cup of tea, they're still pretty good. The soundtrack in this game is nothing short of absolutely beautiful. It is an incredibly relaxing and calming lo-fi that can instantly change gears to a more melancholic piano-heavy lo-fi when the storytelling changes course to something more dramatic or emotional. The soundtrack does more than carry its own weight in this game. I cannot say enough how much I enjoyed this soundtrack. For the most part, I didn't become tired of the music, but to say I never did would not be true, but rather those times of musical boredom were fleeting as well as few and far between. To say I disliked the music by any means would be an egregious lie. As for the gameplay, Midnight Ramen is a visual novel through and through, with the mechanics revolving around serving ramen with various side dishes and a drink for the customer to wash it all down with. With that said, the gameplay experience I had in Midnight Ramen was better than Coffee Talk. While in Coffee Talk, you get to choose from a handful of different ingredients, you can only choose 3 per drink, and those ingredients must be chosen in a specific order, otherwise the drink is considered wrong. You can draw art on top of the lattes you make if you want, but that's it. In Midnight Ramen, you get to choose which broth you want for your ramen, a regular or large size of noodles, you can choose how firm or soft to cook the noodles, you can choose which toppings go on the ramen such as soft-boiled eggs, seaweed, etc., and you can choose which drinks and side dishes to serve such as soda, green tea, pot stickers, tamagoyaki, and many more. Compared to Coffee Talk, Midnight Ramen has a lot more customization and leniency when it comes to food assembly, which I found to be much more enjoyable. Not to mention, right off the bat, you are given a recipe book for all the different types of ramen, completely filled out. In Coffee Talk, you're given a couple recipes for free, be it from your phone or from the customer, but for the most part, an overwhelming majority of these recipes are unknown and must be discovered through gameplay, most of which are learned from trial and error. It isn't that I didn't like discovering recipes, it was that I had to choose the correct ingredients and also place them in the correct order, and if I didn't, the customer would say the drink they received was close to what they ordered, but not quite right. In Midnight Ramen, you have a recipe book with all the different recipes in it. I appreciate that the developers included this, but I do wish there was a little more discovery and experimentation with the orders than what Midnight Ramen has. But ultimately, I'd rather have a recipe book with zero room for error than gameplay that tells me to take a guess, then tell me it's wrong as if it's my fault I got the recipe wrong, with those errors being as little as accidentally swapping 2 ingredients around. While the gameplay in Midnight Ramen is minimal, it's still much more in-depth than Coffee Talk. I didn't hate Coffee Talk's gameplay at all, but I was pleasantly surprised with how much more mechanics are involved with Midnight Ramen and the leniency of preparation as well. As for the price tag, Midnight Ramen costs $12 US, and I got about 6 hours of gameplay out of it while unlocking 12 of the 20 achievements. Not necessarily a bad price, and not necessarily a bad amount of time either, especially for a visual novel. But if money is a little tight, the price tag might be a little steep for the amount of time you'll get out of it. You can, however, go back and replay certain days if you were to serve a customer who didn't get a meal accurate to their order, which in my case was only 2 days. Aside from that though, there isn't much replayability. In Coffee Talk, I've heard that there are hidden dialogue options and even a hidden ending depending on the drink served, but in Midnight Ramen, I don't think that is much of a thing as it seems much more linear than Coffee Talk. This isn't a bad thing as not every game needs alternate dialogue paths or alternate endings, but a lack of replayability will affect the playtime, which will then affect the price tag. With all of that said, I give Midnight Ramen a rating of 8.2 sausages out of 10. The story is absolutely fantastic, but it should be explicitly stated that this game is not for anyone who is currently emotionally stressed due to death or loss of a loved one. The topics discussed in this game are incredibly deep and heavy that even I myself struggled to sit and read through. But again, even with that warning, the story in this game is not easily forgettable. The art is great as well, though I'll admit, I don't think it stands out to really grab your interest or full attention. I mean this with all due respect, but it almost looks like an anime-themed Flash game. That is not to say that the art is bad by any stretch of the imagination, I just mean it doesn't stand out enough to really be unique. Good and unique aren't exclusively mutual, and that's okay. The soundtrack is beautiful, whether it's something cheerful playing in the background while having fun with customers, or something in a minor key and melancholic while important story events are unfolding. The music did grow tiresome on occasion, but these moments were extremely few and far between. The gameplay is much more in-depth than I expected, be it from choosing how long to cook noodles to choosing what ingredients to choose from. On top of that, if you ever feel stuck, there is a recipe book to refer to that will help guide you in making the perfect bowl of ramen for your customers. The price tag might be a little steep for some, considering that it's $12 for 6 hours of gameplay with little to no replayability, so it might be best to catch this game on sale, but in terms of gameplay and narrative, it's quite fantastic. Again, I hate to compare Midnight Ramen to Coffee Talk, but Coffee Talk is considered the gold standard of visual novels, and in my Coffee Talk review, I rated that game an 8.2 out of 10 as well. To have an indie game even smaller than Coffee Talk earn a rating that is on par with the gold standard is quite an achievement. Midnight Ramen might not be for everyone, but to any Coffee Talk fans out there, I urge you to try this game. And that's my review of Midnight Ramen. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, and I also have a Discord for casual viewers and other content creators alike, so consider joining me on both of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my video here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Released by Derek Lawson on January 3rd, 2025, The Memories That Shape Us is a narrative-driven walking simulator where you step into the shoes of a man where you are tasked with finding memory capsules. These capsules share the lessons, struggles, and joys experienced throughout the life that tells the story of this character. Before we start, I just want to mention that I'll be combining some of these categories out of a desire not to be redundant, or because the categories have a lot of overlap, such as story and gameplay, and graphics and art. The story and gameplay. You play as an unnamed character, perhaps from the perspective of Derek Lawson himself, starting as a child with the very first memory capsule being about remembering the scent of cookies. It isn't the cookies themselves that made the memory valuable, but rather from a time when his mother was still his guardian and caregiver, when his mother was still youthful, energy-filled, and able-bodied. As you play and experience these memories, the main character grows older and older, starting from an elementary school age to a teenager to a full-grown adult. You experience what it was like growing up with siblings, to having a best friend, a first love, death, and the 5 stages that accompany it, to overall growth as a person. Many of these themes are relatable, as having siblings, friends, and death are not unique and reserved to just a handful of us, but rather these themes invoke almost a sense of comfort and nostalgia in me. I'm not the only one who remembers having fresh-baked cookies as a child. I'm not the only one who remembers playing video games in my youth and in my early 30s, but that's not the point. I'm not the only one who remembers their first job either. While the story has themes that aren't unique by themselves, the events that unfold and in the manner of which they unfold make for a story that is at times a little lackluster, while at others quite gripping, and that will depend solely on the person playing and their own life experiences. 2 last little tidbits to share about this game is that there are some Christian themes to this. That is not to say that these themes are good or bad, nor are they over the top or subliminal, just that there are some minor religious themes. If you're a Christian and like these themes, this may appeal to you. If you don't like religion in your games, this might be a turnoff. Again, not good or bad, but these themes are there, so just be aware. The game also has an ending that should probably only be experienced by a mature audience and should also have a trigger warning. I had a guess as to what the story would have in store for me based solely on the start menu after opening the game, but there still was no hint that this game would have such a dark and heavy theme to it anywhere on the Steam page, so just be aware this game should come with a trigger warning. I won't say what this trigger warning should be, as that might spoil some of the story, but you as the viewer can come up with a few ideas as to what the trigger warning could be, and until the developer adds a trigger warning, just know that if you're worried about any of those triggers, you may want to stay away from this game for the time being. Let's continue. Graphics and art. To no one's surprise, the game looks great, and that's because it was made on Unreal Engine. The whole game looks great, but I won't say perfect. The first thing you'll notice is that you explore these different homes on what is basically an island. I like that, as it gives me the feeling of this whole home being an isolated memory where nothing outside the parameter exists, just these houses and the memories associated with them. As for the memories themselves, they're just little glowing white balls with an item inside them that explode into what I can only assume are sparks or fireworks. If you're looking at this game and thinking it looks a little bare, plain, or even empty though, I wouldn't disagree with you, but so long as you appreciate the bigger picture rather than focusing on the smaller details, I don't see this really being such a big deal. Voiceover. I might be nitpicking here, but I found the voiceover to be quite boring. I'm no professional, as I'm sure you can tell by my videos, but I still at least try to make myself sound interesting. To a degree, I understand why the voiceover for this game sounds the way it does, as to me they're attempting to invoke a feeling of nostalgia, happiness, and sadness at certain times throughout the story, but trying to invoke those feelings compared to actually hearing and believing them is different. The voiceover isn't monotone, but lack of fluctuation and bounce of the tone of the voiceover left me feeling a little bit to be desired. Price tag. Currently, the memories that shape us is $10 US on Steam, and it took me about an hour and 45 minutes to complete. The developer does mention in the very first sentence of the description that this game lasts about an hour and a half to 2 hours. I find this price tag to be quite steep because the story is extremely linear with no achievements, and after you play it once, there really isn't any reason to play it again. That is not to say that the story isn't a good story, but rather that there really isn't any desire to replay this game. $10 for a game that at most can be finished in 2 hours, that's just too steep. With all of that said, I give the memories that shape us a rating of 6.8 sausages out of 10. The story and gameplay isn't bad, but it definitely isn't for everyone either. First and foremost, this is a narrative-driven walking simulator that doesn't even have NPCs. Whether you like these types of games or not, you know who you are and you know what kinds of games you like. I'm not here to try to sell you on trying this walking sim if you don't like walking sims. That said, the story is quite fantastic as you get to experience the life of a man from his early days as a child, to his teenage years, and then to his early adult years, taking in many of the joys and hardships that life has to offer. Graphically and artistically, the game looks great as it is made in Unreal Engine, but to some, the game may look a little bit empty and lacking in some places, though I'd argue if you're focused on those aspects of the game that maybe you're focusing too much on the wrong parts. The voiceover leaves a little bit to be desired. While the voiceover isn't bad, that doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement either. I just wish the tone felt more alive, be it cheerful and happy during the happy moments, or even hearing the person trying not to choke on their words while experiencing a hardship. Lastly, the price tag. $10 for a game that took me just under 2 hours to beat with no achievements and what I can only assume is no replayability is just too high. $1 for an hour of gameplay is totally fair, $2 for an hour of gameplay I can make an exception for, $5 for an hour of gameplay that is just walking and listening to someone speak with no replayability, that's just too high. If the price could be dropped to $5, I would feel comfortable rating this game a 7 or even higher, but right now, my advice would be to wait until this game is on sale. And that's my review of the memories that shape us. If you enjoyed this video, then consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also have a Twitch channel where I stream occasionally, and a Discord for casual viewers and content creators alike, so consider joining me on both of those platforms as well. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Released onto Steam on January 24th, 2025, Benign Land is a short, dreamlike walking simulator where you drift through haunting scenes set in Northern Ireland from pagan times to recent historical events revolving around the Troubles. I do want to preface this review by saying Benign Land contains political, religious, and historical depictions related to the conflict known as the Troubles in Northern Ireland. These themes may be triggering to some, so caution is advised. With that out of the way, let's start the review. Since I've already mentioned that the game is about the Troubles in Northern Ireland, I suppose the best place to start the review is at the story. As I stated, this is a dreamlike walking sim where you explore the history of Northern Ireland. Unfortunately, I am not Irish, nor am I a Northern Ireland historian. The most I know about the Troubles is from the song Zombie by the Cranberries. I think that there was a religious element to the conflict between Catholics and Protestants, I think, but even then, I'm not 100% sure. Benign Land is meant to be an artistic experience about the Troubles in Ireland, but I left the game at best with no further understanding of the conflict, and at worst, more questions after playing than I did before I started. The game has you travel through different scenes in dreamlike settings, but without context, I can only guess as to what's happening. Some games can pull off this storytelling strategy, but there are not many models and assets for the player to inspect, and even then, the lighting is so dark that, like I said, without context, I was left guessing as to exactly what I was looking at and what impression it was meant to leave on me. As for the graphics, the game looks incredible. I want to assume this game was developed in Unreal Engine, but I'm not entirely sure. At first, I was unsure about how I felt about the graphics, as it is quite dark and hard to see everything, but after the first level or two, that dreamlike quality started to grow on me. While I understand that the developer made the game dark to invoke a dreamlike feeling, less is more here. Some levels have a red glow in the background or have spotlights in interesting places, which adds to the feeling of the experience being a nightmare, but the levels that don't have these elements just feel unnecessarily dark for no reason. Lastly, I want to talk about how much time I spent playing the game. Overall, I spent 30 minutes on the game, but really, this game can be completed in 15. The developer does advertise this game taking 30 to 45 minutes to complete, but I finished it in just 15 minutes. The reason I spent an extra 15 minutes playing the Benign Land is because the entire game is a loop. I figured if I kept playing that perhaps I would find a new path, route, level, scene, whatever you want to call it, but after replaying half the game a second time, after carefully looking around, I can speak with near certainty that this game is just a loop with no real ending. While I can understand why someone may introduce an element like this to their game, I just can't really understand why it was implemented in this game. Perhaps the developer was trying to introduce a feeling of never-endingness or like a perpetual unease, uncertainty, or even nightmare, but this looping mechanic, if you can call it that, just doesn't work. Benign Land costs $5, and for something that only lasts 15 minutes, I just can't justify it. The developer may have spent a decent penny on whatever engine they used, or perhaps they feel $5 justifies the time and effort spent creating the game, or maybe the developer just decided this game feels like it is worth $5, but regardless, the price is just too high. With all of that said, I give Benign Land a rating of 4.3 sausages out of 10. I love the idea that this game is an interactive art installation about the troubles of Northern Ireland. Unfortunately, if you don't know anything about this conflict in this time period, then you won't have any idea what's going on. What I would recommend to the developer is to add a text window explaining what is going on the scene, or perhaps even a commentary mode where someone talks to the player like it's a guided audio tour. Without these elements, anyone without knowledge of the troubles is going to have a confusing experience about what happened in Northern Ireland. As for the graphics, some places are quite dark and it makes it a little difficult to see, not to mention there aren't many assets to allow the player to infer what's going on. Yes, there are some scenes that have models such as barbed wire, which speaks for itself, but aside from these small assets, I cannot tell what is supposed to be going on, which ties back into the story. My recommendation would be to make the game less dark, but then the next issue is perhaps the lack of assets in the game. Some games can look good while being empty, but I cannot comment on that because, well, it's too dark and I just can't tell. As for the price tag, my plain and simple feedback is to drop it to $1 or $2. While at the time of this review, Benign Land has 13 reviews, leaving this game with a 92% positive rating, what will happen when 13 more people buy this game? Are 12 of those 13 customers going to be happy spending $5 on a game that just loops after 15 minutes? I sure know I would be demanding a refund. My advice would be to wait until this game is 50% off at the very minimum. And that's my review of Benign Land. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, and I have a Discord as well for both casual viewers and content creators alike, so consider joining me on both of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Released onto Steam on December 5th, 2024, Supersize My Heart is a fast food themed dating sim where your goal is to win over the heart of your favorite fast food mascot. But, is this combo meal all it's cracked up to be? You play as a self-named character going to a culinary school for fast food, and your classmates are actually fast food mascots as well. To give you an example of what these mascots are like, one of them is named Sovereign and he's dressed to look like a king. Of course, you can't call him king because it's made to be like Burger King, and that for legal reasons you just can't do that. There's another one where the character is named Sunny, and their head is shaped like a big yellow star, kind of like Hardee's or Carl's Jr., depending on what side of the country you're on. There's one character, she owns a coffee shop and she's a mermaid, so Starbucks. One character though that really confuses me is a character named Mackie. They have orange hair, they look like a leprechaun. Everything's white and green, they've got white and green striped sleeves. They've got like this weird, it's almost like a teardrop tattoo, like a prison tattoo, except it's a 4-leaf clover. I assume Mackie is McDonald's, but you see the confusion here, right? They look like a leprechaun. Aside from a shamrock shake, I don't really know why they're, Irish themed, but I assume that's McDonald's. If it's not McDonald's, let me know in the comments because I really have no idea. As you play, you also get to unravel mysteries. One of these mysteries being that every single fast food restaurant is owned by a parent company under an umbrella called Nummy Brands. And the school that you're going to is also owned by Nummy Brands, but the company has a leaker on the inside leaking valuable information, and you don't know who it is. So this is just one of those mysteries you get to solve. There's another mystery. I don't want to get into spoilers, but it happened before you even showed up. There is a character that just ends up disappearing, and then they transform into some sort of cryptid. So not only is this game a visual novel and a dating sim, but there are branches of story that split off from the main story, which is the dating sim of fast food mascots, and you get to explore those different mysteries. Like I just said, it's a visual novel where all you really do is left click to progress the story, but occasionally you will run into RPG elements where you get to choose certain dialogue options, or when you leave the school, you can actually go to different areas around town that have different characters and different events, such as the beach or a nightclub. One of the characters and events that you can run into is that if you go to the beach, you'll run into Sovereign, the mascot for not Burger King, and you will pull a prank on one of Mackey's delivery drivers. The Sovereign will convince you to go to the truck with him, and you can choose what happens. I think one of them is like you get to slash a tire, or you can swap all the burgers in Mackey's truck with Sovereign's burgers. So instead of, people are thinking that they're getting a McDonald's burger, but instead they're getting a Burger King burger. There are little events like this with different characters that you can experience throughout your playthrough, and then these events and these characters will give you a sort of reputation bonus. This is where the dating sim element comes into play, and by doing all of these different activities and siding with different characters and choosing certain dialogue options, you will raise your reputation with them to then get different outcomes later in the game. The art's pretty generic, and not necessarily in a bad way. The backdrop, that's the most generic part, but then again, it's the backdrop, it's the background. You're really only using that to build atmosphere. You're not really focused on the background. You're gonna look at it when you first load into a new scene, but ultimately it takes a back seat because it's the backdrop. But it's still important to mention. It's pretty generic, but I think that's kind of okay because it is just a backdrop. You're not focused on that. The character models, however, are pretty unique because you have Sovereign, who looks like a king. You have Mackey, who looks like a leprechaun clown. Not so much clown, more leprechaun. You've got Sunny, who, they've got a big golden star for a head. You've got all these different mascots, and as I'm sure you know, because you're watching this and I'm sure you know what fast food is, you don't live under a rock and you weren't born in 1800, I'm sure that you know that all these different characters, all these different restaurants have their own look, they have their own logo, they have their own mascots, they are all visually distinct and unique, and this game does a very good job at expressing that, right? Sovereign looks way different than Sunny. Burger King looks way different than Carl's Jr. or Hardee's. So the character models are extremely unique, and honestly, that's the best part of the art for this game. Some of the backdrops, are unique themselves, but for the most part, they're just backdrops, they're just backgrounds. The music is great, it's just a little repetitive and mind-numbing. What I mean is that when you load into a scene, it's going to have good music, but after that first 120 seconds or however long a song might last, it just repeats it automatically. There's not really any downtime in between the songs. It's minute 19, minute 20, and then 0 again, and then 1 second, 2 second. It just immediately starts replaying. What I would have liked is maybe have it play another song that's in the same genre, same vibe, whatever it might be, because hearing the same song just immediately, play again for the entire gameplay, for the entire duration of the gameplay, I just didn't enjoy it. And now you do have different songs that play for different scenes, of course. If it's like an intense scene, you're gonna have fast rock music. But if it's like at night and you're like in the club or something, it might be like lo-fi or something along those lines, right? They do have variety in the music, but one scene does not last for 90 seconds. One scene will last 10 minutes. So to hear the same song repeat 5 times in a row, it gets a little stale after a while. One song I do want to mention though is Sunny's rap. I'm not going to get into the details story-wise about, the lore behind Sunny's rap, but it was a very good song, so I'm going to go ahead and play it for you now.
Yeah, when they got a craving and they gotta eat, they need something hard, 100% Angus beef. Yeah, come on in, don't be no stranger. Got that taste that you can savor. Lick the sauce right off your fingers. What you really need is angles.
I don't want to play the whole thing for you because, we'll be here for a minute or so. But trust me, This was an unexpected surprise, and honestly, I mean, it's goofy, but I liked it. Now let's go ahead and talk about the time, or how long it took me to complete the game. It took me 5 to 6 hours to complete, and the game costs $10. There's definitely room for replayability, but I myself just don't see myself replaying it. There's replayability because there are different options that you can choose and different paths you can take, different characters that you can romance. You know, you can go to the beach, you can go to the nightclub, you can go back to school to study. There's different options that you can choose, which leads me to believe that there are plenty of outcomes for the game once you actually beat it. But I myself don't feel interested enough in doing that. Now, dating sims aren't really my thing, so people who love visual novels, people who love dating sims, you might enjoy this game better than I did. I think the reason I didn't enjoy it was because I either misunderstood or maybe the description was a little misleading. I enjoy visual novels. I played Midnight Ramen and I played Coffee Talk, and I'd like to play Coffee Talk too. I love RPG elements. Fallout New Vegas, I've beat that game more times than I can count. Where I think I misunderstood or was misled is that this is a dating sim for fast food mascots, which to me is funny. That's comical. It's almost satirical. But playing this, I was kind of bored the whole time. There were a few moments here and there that I thought were funny, but for the most part, I spent 5 to 6 hours thinking, this is boring. This is not my kind of game. So if this is your kind of game, you might get 10, 12, 15, 17, 20 hours out of the game if you decide to replay it for all these different endings. But if you're someone in my shoes who wants to get it because it looks funny and then you only play it once because it's not your kind of game, you're going to be let down because you spent $10 on a boring game that's lasted 5 to 6 hours, and that's just where I'm sitting with this. With all of that said, Supersize My Heart earns a rating of 6.2 sausages out of 10. First and foremost, the game is not actually as funny as it sounds, right? You think you're going to go on a date with Ronald McDonald, you think you're going to go on a date with the King from Burger King, and maybe you might actually get that, but I myself didn't experience those outcomes. I don't know if I inadvertently avoided the dating sim mechanics. I didn't mean to if I did, but I didn't experience that. I'm kind of okay with it, but at the same time, it's advertised as a dating sim, and I didn't experience that. I did experience dating sim elements, but the dating sim as a whole, I feel like I somehow dodged it, and therefore, I just don't feel like it was really that funny. So I spent 5 to 6 hours. Occasionally I might, have smirked or chuckled, but as a whole, the game was boring. I didn't find it funny. Is that a misunderstanding on my part? Maybe. Was I misled on the developer's part? Maybe. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, I thought that this was going to be a comedic game, and I was bored the whole time. The mysteries that I mentioned at the very beginning, they didn't get resolved either. The leaker at the company, I finished the game, there's a big climax at the end, climactic ending, if you want to call it that, but nothing got resolved. The leaker didn't get resolved. The character who turns into a cryptid, don't know what happened with that. There's another character who gets caught in an area, and it's kind of suspicious. I chose to let that character go because, we're kind of friends, I suppose. Nothing happened with that. There were at least, that I can remember, 3 loose ends that don't get mentioned at all. What happened with them? Don't know. Gonna have to replay it to find out, but like I said, the game wasn't that fun. I was bored for the whole 5 to 6 hours. I'm not gonna bother. Not to mention, like I also said, there is a dating sim element, but I didn't really get to experience it, and it's not because I was trying to avoid it. I just didn't experience it. I would run into certain characters outside of school, but that's it. I didn't romance any characters. I'm okay with it, but again, it's advertised. I didn't experience it. The gameplay, it's pretty solid. It's a visual novel with RPG elements. I'm okay with just clicking to progress the story and making certain options, but going back to the dating sim part, where is it? I didn't experience it. The art's pretty fine, I guess, right? The backdrop, the background, you're not really focused on it, but it's still important to mention. The characters look great. The models, well, not models per se, as you know, they're just drawings, but the characters look good, and the developer, or whoever the artist is for anyway, you know, the characters look good. They look fine. The artist drew variations of the different characters to display different emotions. You know, they might be leaned back holding their stomach and they're laughing, or their eyebrows might be furrowed to show that they're mad or something. So the characters look fine. The backdrop, it's fine, it's okay. So overall, you know, the art's decent. It's fine. It's pretty average. Not good, not bad. It's just average. The music is really good. The unfortunate part is that the songs are too short and the scenes are too long. So as soon as one song is finished, it immediately loops back to the beginning, and you will listen to the same song 5 times at least in the same scene. And no matter how good a song is, eventually they just become repetitive. I would have liked to have seen other songs in similar genres with similar vibes play after the next one, because at least if you have 2 songs in the same type of scene, at least it's not repeating as frequently. You'll finish one song, second song will play, and then it'll loop back to the first song. That would have been a little more enjoyable. It would have made things a little less stale. And then, of course, I want to shout out Sunny's rap again, because it's pretty good. As for the time, 5 to 6 hours, $10. If you want to replay the game, you're going to get your money's worth. If you don't want to replay the game, such as myself, you might be a little let down. Just know that the game is not as funny as it looks, and the dating sim element, not really there. So, if you want to spend the $10 for the 5 to 6 hours, or, you know, 10 to 12, or 15 to 20, whatever, just know that if you go into this thinking it's going to be funny, it's not really going to be that funny. And that's my review of Supersize My Heart. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below if you ended up playing the game, and tell me what you think about it. I also have a Twitch channel and a Discord for content creators and casual viewers alike, so consider following me on both of those platforms as well. I'm going to leave a link for everything in the description below. This is my first video where I kind of made bullet points. I don't know how I'm going to feel about it, but if you guys are watching this and you're thinking, this sounds a little bit different, well, that's because I don't have a script. I have a bunch of bullet points, and hopefully this turns out well. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Have you ever had the masculine or feminine urge to dig a hole? Released onto Steam on February 7th, 2025, a game about digging a hole is, well, a game about digging a hole. The craziest part about all of this, however, is that an employee of the company who made this game actually came up with the idea for this while on vacation, then spent 14 days creating this game. So just keep that in mind as we dig through this review. Sorry. The story is short, sweet, and simple. You buy a house for $10,000 and then you start digging a hole in the backyard. My only 2 questions are when and why. Why is the house only $10,000? Does it take place in 1959, or is there some sort of issue with the plot of land? I can't really get into that because that would be getting into spoilers. Just know you see a house for $10,000, you buy it, and then you start digging a hole. That's it. That's the whole story. As for the gameplay, your only goal is to dig a hole. You start the game with a little garden trowel, but as you play, you can upgrade into bigger and bigger shovels. The way to do that, though, is you have to dig and you will find minerals or ores, starting with just regular stone, moving up to coal, copper. Eventually, you'll be finding silver, gold, platinum, diamonds, and then you sell these rocks and ores for money, which then you use the money to upgrade your items. Like I said with the shovel, you can upgrade your shovel to get bigger and bigger so you can dig bigger and bigger holes. You can upgrade your backpack, which will hold more ore and more minerals, such as your rocks, your stones, your diamonds, all those sorts of things. You can upgrade your battery to be a bigger battery, which I'll get to, and you can upgrade your jetpack, which allows you to fly faster. Now you might be asking yourself, Sausage, why do you have a jetpack? Well, that's because everybody knows the most efficient way to climb out of a hole is with a jetpack. Now, let's go back to the shovel. Shovel requires manually clicking to dig. You have to left click, left click, left click, left click. But the last 3 or so upgrades give you a drill, which automatically digs for you so long as you actually hold the left mouse button. Now, let's talk about the battery. Your shovel is battery powered, which doesn't make any sense, but it is. And as you dig, or as you use your jetpack, you will use your battery charge. If you lose all of your battery charge, you'll basically pass out and then revive on the surface, but you'll lose all your ore. You'll keep all your money, you'll keep all your upgrades, but any ores, any minerals, all those things that you found, those are just gone, so you'll have to go back down in the hole and dig more minerals. On top of that, there is some extra equipment that you can buy, such as lamps and dynamite, both of which are pretty self-explanatory, as lamps light up the area and then dynamite blows things up. Now let's talk about the time. I beat this game in about 2 hours, and the game costs about $5. Not a bad price for the amount of time you get out of it, but just know that it is a pretty short game. I did read a Steam review saying that the game could be speed run, whatever the word might be. The game could be completed in about an hour if you really want to, but just know that on average, it'll take you about 2 hours to beat. With all of that said, I give a game about digging a hole a rating of 6.6 sausages out of 10. First, I just want to get this out there. The game did not earn a 6.6 sausage rating because I dislike it. I actually had a pretty decent time playing this game. As for the story, it's minimal and almost non-existent. You buy a house, you start digging. That's it. The gameplay is also pretty minimal, though for the most part, it's pretty solid. All you do is dig some more, sell some rocks and stuff, upgrade your equipment, and then keep digging. I do have a couple minor complaints though. First off, the dynamite doesn't actually feel like dynamite. If you're buying dynamite and you're throwing dynamite, you expect it to be, well, dynamite. Instead, they feel like little corner store gas station firecrackers, right? There are some big rocks deep in your backyard and the hole that you're digging that your shovel or your drill can't break through. So you buy dynamite to blow those up. But when you throw it, it's just poof. Just a little thing of smoke, and then the rock just disappears almost. It turns into dirt so you can dig through it, but you would think being dynamite it's going to be a big explosion, and it's not. It's very disappointing, I suppose. It's a game mechanic, but again, being dynamite, you would think it's going to be dynamite. It's going to be a TNT. It's an explosive. It's pop. That's it. Next, there's a chest in the garage, and it's got 2 locks on it. I replayed this game a second time, and I spent over 2.5 hours looking for the keys for this chest. In my first playthrough, I found 1 set of keys, but I didn't find the other one. So, I replayed the game again, spent 2.5 hours looking for the keys, found both sets of keys, and I opened the chest. I'm not going to tell you what was in there because it's a spoiler, and some people might want to find the keys, but I'm telling you, I felt disappointed. I felt kind of let down. When you open the chest, you'll get 2 items. One of the items I didn't realize was a one-time use. I'm not going to tell you what it was. Again, spoilers. But I used it, and it was done, and I thought, wow, that's it? That's all you get? It serves a purpose. It isn't just, fireworks on your screen that say good job or whatever. It actually does something, but it just didn't feel worth it. The second item, it increases the effectiveness of one of the items you get to use in the game, but again, I didn't feel like it was really that worth it. I mean, if you find both sets of keys, great, there's no reason not to open it. But if you replay the game or you want to find both sets of keys before completing the game, just know you'll probably be a little bit disappointed. Next, there's fall damage. I feel like the fall damage is a bit exaggerated. Usually in a game, you've got a pretty decent amount of leeway, and I suppose that there is in this game, because even though the distance that you are granted to fall without taking damage isn't that much, the amount of damage you actually take, again, isn't that much. There is an achievement for falling so far, but I don't really care about that. The reason that this is really an issue is because when you're digging, you don't clear out everything. There might be specks of dirt here or there that when you're falling into the hole, let's say you're an hour into the game and you've dug pretty far down, the hole isn't completely empty. There's just specks of dirt just hanging out in the air. They don't fall down, or in a game like Deep Rock Galactic, where if it's not connected, if it's not touching the wall in some way, the ceiling, floor, whatever it is, they don't have just floating dirt. It just, poof, disappears, it crumbles. That doesn't happen in this game, so you might not actually see it there. It might be really small. I mean, if you get close, you're going to see it, but if you're falling, there's a very good chance that you are going to hit a speck of dirt and you could get hurt. Now, this isn't really that big of an issue because you can just, very gently tap on the jetpack to slow your fall, but it's still an issue that I think needed to be addressed. Now remember, this game did only take 14 days to make, and I don't know how many people worked on it. Regardless, 14 days, that's not a lot of time. So I'm cutting the developer slack in this regard, because I've never developed a game, let alone a game in 14 days. While the game is fun, I just wish there was more going on. I wish there were more mechanics. It's only a 2-hour game, took them 14 days to complete. Instead of a jetpack, maybe make that, there's the drill for the shovel, there's a drill upgrade for the shovel. It's like the last 3 upgrades. Why not start the game off with ladders? Make you buy ladders, and then eventually you can upgrade the ladder or ladders, or maybe make it a purchasable item. Make the jetpack, an end game thing, so you're not spending 15 minutes climbing out of the hole that you made. Instead, you've got the jetpack and you're up there in 15 seconds, Overall, I did enjoy the game, but it is minimal. It's minimal. I can't explain, I can't elaborate any more about how minimal it is. You dig a hole for 2 hours, that's it. And that's my review of a game about digging a hole. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, and I have a Discord for both casual viewers and content creators alike, so consider joining me on both of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Released onto Steam on August 1st, 2024, Weather Dominance is a 2D roguelike side-scroller where you play as an intelligent cloud. Your goal is to fly around blasting lightning, freezing enemies, and control other weather phenomena to defeat enemies and solve puzzles in randomized levels over the course of 3 days. Before we start the review, I want to preface this by saying I received this product for free. To be clear, I did not purchase this game. The developer gifted me a free Steam key. With that out of the way, let's start the review. The first thing you'll notice is the art style. While the art isn't bad, it just seems plain. It's like vanilla ice cream. I personally enjoy vanilla ice cream, but many people consider vanilla to be a boring flavor, and that's sort of what this is like. This looks like a Flash game or something made in Microsoft Paint. Games like those have a certain charm, however, betting on an art style like this means needing other areas of the game to do a little more of the heavy lifting. With that said though, each model is quite unique and stands out in its own way, whether it being a bubble enemy, the plant that grows if you rain on it, or even a little caveman NPC. Each model looks unique and not just a reskin of other models. As for the gameplay, it suffers from a couple issues. First off, the tutorial needs some work. While it does a decent job at explaining most of the mechanics, there are a few times where the game led me up 9 steps, but I had to figure out the 10th and final step myself. Likewise, after completing the tutorial and getting into the game, there were a few things, again, that I had to figure out myself, such as what the keys and the diamonds are for. The keys are pretty self-explanatory in that they open things, namely chests, but diamonds? I still have no idea. Moving on to the combat, I feel as if the enemies move too fast, attack too quickly, and hit too hard. The reason I consider this a problem is because there is no upgrade system, nor do the enemies have any sort of scaling difficulty. If you collect enough coins, you can visit a shop and purchase upgrades, or if you defeat a boss, you can acquire an upgrade, but if you die, your game is over. It's a roguelike game with no form of permanent upgrades or customization aside from a handful of different clouds to pick from at the beginning of the game that have varying stats. Of course, not every game needs permanent upgrades, and maybe it's a skill issue on my end, but that doesn't change the experience I had. A couple things that weren't a skill issue though was that since the levels are randomly generated, sometimes the puzzles will be impossible to complete. One example is that I was required to have an NPC reach the top of a cliff, but there was no mushroom to jump on or plant to climb. While I hate to say fix it, as I have no game developing experience, a game with bugs like these make it impossible to complete, and if I cannot complete it, then I won't want to continue playing. So, this needs to be addressed. There's no way around that. To give credit where credit is due, however, there are 4 different modes to pick from: Explore, Adventure, Quests, and Challenges. Explore is misleading in that this is nothing more than the tutorial where you learn the mechanics. Adventure is the roguelike portion of the game where you play various levels defeating enemies until you fight a boss. Quests are just randomly generated one-off puzzle maps where you are required to get your little caveman NPC to the end of the map while also defeating enemies. This mode would be this game's bread and butter, but like I said before, it's a bit buggy and sometimes these levels cannot be completed due to the required assets not loading in due to its randomization. Lastly, challenges might be the weakest link of them all, as there are only 2 challenges in this menu. The first challenge being to water all of the plants as quickly as possible, and the second challenge requiring you to put out fires as quickly as possible. This option seems like it was forgotten about, as there are plenty of other mechanics in the game that could have challenges associated with them. However, it only has 2 challenges, which are quite similar as they both require raining on a certain area, be it a plant or fire. As for the price, it's sitting at $5 US. The tutorial took way too long and had way too many completion screens. Not to mention, I felt like I was not making any sort of progress nor had any reason to want to play. What I mean is that with RPGs, there's a story. With shooting and racing games, there is adrenaline and thrill. With roguelites, it's all about making crazy builds. This game has none of those elements. That said, I could potentially get 5 hours out of this, but would I really enjoy it? Probably not. With all of that said, I give this game a rating of 5 out of 10 sausages. The art is this game's biggest strength, but even then, it could still use a little oomph to it. The art is decent, but it's just sort of plain and average. If the dev could introduce something like cell shading, I think it would make the game visually pop just a little more. The gameplay feels like a diamond that's rough around the edges. I see what the developer is aiming for, though it needs a lot of TLC and some polish. Consider adding permanent upgrades like a skill tree. Make the enemies scale in difficulty as you progress rather than static stats. Some of the generations of the levels need a little attention too, as some puzzles appeared broken and therefore impossible to complete. The price isn't bad, but based on the current status of the game, it's just too high compared to the experience I got out of it. If the gameplay had some adjusting, I would probably want to play longer, and the longer I play, the higher the score of the pricing. If I played this game for 10 hours compared to the time I have put into it thus far, the pricing would be much more justifiable. Not to mention, this 5 out of 10 score is quite generous, as I did not include a category for the soundtrack or the user interface. There are some sound effects in game, such as thunder when you shoot lightning or water droplets when raining, but besides that, there is nothing. There is no background music or anything. While that isn't necessarily bad, as I can find my own music to listen to, but if you want me to really enjoy the game and feel immersed into it, having a soundtrack of any kind is a must. As for the UI, it just seems a little unpolished. Some windows have buttons on screen that allow you to select or go back, but you have to click on those buttons. I'm used to pressing escape to go back, as many other games do that, so I'm not sure why that can't be implemented. Also, I forgot to mention, there is an action wheel that allows you to change which action you want to perform, like raining or shooting lightning. I really like this mechanic as it takes inspiration from Grand Theft Auto, but the issue here is that time does not stop or even slow down like in GTA. If you are in combat, you need to quickly pick which action you want to perform, otherwise the enemies will attack you, and like I said previously, the enemies move too fast, attack too quickly, and hit too hard. It's almost as if this game is punishing you for being in this menu during combat, and that is definitely not doing this game any favors. Another minor issue is that during the tutorial, it'll tell you to press the interact key with greater and less than symbols, so it looks like a placeholder text rather than actual tutorial instruction. I'm confident that if the developer implemented these changes, it could bring the game up to a 7 out of 10, if not more, but as it sits right now, I can only rate Weather Dominance a 5 out of 10, and even then, that's a generous score because like I said, I did not even rate the soundtrack or UI. And that's my review of Weather Dominance. If you got this far, consider liking and subscribing, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, so consider following me on that platform as well. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Somnus is an anomaly detection game where you have to traverse through 13 different levels looking for different anomalies, and to be honest, it was quite challenging. Now, not every room was challenging. There were some anomalies that were really easy, such as one room being completely empty, or one room having the fireplace completely disappear, but there were plenty of other anomalies that took me quite a while to actually learn. One of those anomalies is a pile of wood to the right of the fireplace, and the stack of wood was moved just a little bit to the right. Now, if you saw this anomaly, you might think, okay, that's kind of weird. You're gonna recognize that it was an anomaly, but unless you actually stop and look at the pile of wood, you're not gonna realize that there's an anomaly there. To anyone who might be a little bit curious as well, there are no jump scares. There might be one room, one anomaly that has a type of jump scare, but it's only due to the sound. It's not there. Nothing jumps out at you. It's not a screech. It's just you walk in the room, you see something kind of weird. There's a sound, and the first time I experienced it, it was almost a jump scare. But then again, I'm just sensitive to jump scares. There is one anomaly that I think is important to mention, and that is an anomaly with spiders. If you have arachnophobia, you might want to stay away from this game until maybe the developer can put something in that, you know, will turn off that specific anomaly. It's an extremely obvious anomaly. The spiders don't chase you or jump down or anything. They're just sitting there. They're static, but it is there, so just be aware. One thing that I like that the developer included in their game is in their About section, they said that if you have any anomaly ideas, to send it on over to them and it might get included into the game. There's no guarantee, of course, but if you have an idea, the developer wants to hear about it. I myself actually have 2 anomaly ideas that I'm going to send over to the developer after I get this video out, so if you buy the game, maybe keep an eye out. You might see one of my ideas. As for the graphics and the art, it's not good, it's not bad, it's fine, it's very middle of the road, it's average, it's okay. There were some things that, you know, didn't look too bad, and then there are others where I'm just thinking that doesn't look that great. But what really caught my eye about this game is the medieval aesthetic. Anomaly detection games are dime a dozen. Ever since Exit 8 came out, the very first anomaly detection game as far as I know, there's just been clone after clone after clone. And I like anomaly detection games, but this is the first one I've seen that was medieval themed, and like I said, that's what caught my eye. One thing I do want to mention though is that the game is really dark. I ended up closing my curtains so I could see it better. I don't know if I was missing anomalies or not, but just be aware that if you are in a room that's pretty bright, you might want to adjust something so that you can see better. It's really dark. Now let's talk about the soundtrack, or more precisely, the lack thereof. There is no soundtrack to this game. That's not good or bad, it's just an objective observation. The lack of music could add a certain type of ambiance to the game, but I don't think that's completely accurate. The lack of music or the lack of soundtrack could make the game appear creepy, but the game itself isn't creepy. There's the one room that has a potential jump scare, kind of, or there's the one room that has spiders if you have arachnophobia, But overall, the lack of soundtrack doesn't make the game feel more creepy. It's just, there's just no soundtrack. You might like that there's no soundtrack, or maybe you don't. Really, it's a personal preference. As for the time, this game is listed at $4 on Steam, and it took me just under 3 hours to complete. Now, it does say that it'll take anywhere between 20 minutes and 120 minutes to complete, but in my experience, it took 3 hours. With all of that said, I give Somnus a sausage rating of 6.5 sausages out of 10. Somnus is an anomaly detection game where you have to traverse 13 levels. Most anomaly detection games I've played require you to play 8 levels, 10, maybe 12, but 13, this is higher than any other anomaly detection game I've played. Some of these anomalies are extremely easy, while others require a very keen eye. With that said though, some of these rooms might be bugged. The amount of rooms I traversed where I combed very carefully through every detail, seeing nothing wrong, progressing, and then getting sent back to 0, it was quite frustrating. To give credit where credit is due, however, the developer explicitly states to report any bugs that you might find. The only issue is that I don't know what the bugs were, so, or if there were even any bugs to begin with. Maybe it was a skill issue on my part. I don't know. But the developer does ask the player to report any bugs that they might find, and if you are playing this game and you have any anomaly ideas, the developer said please send some ideas to them, and if you're lucky, maybe they'll get implemented. So, credit where credit is due. As for the graphics and the art, like I said, pretty middle of the road, pretty average, not good, not bad. Some things are good, some things are bad. You're going to have that with pretty much most games. This, graphically and art style wise, pretty average. But also, like I said, what caught my eye is the medieval aesthetic. We've got plenty of anomaly detection games. This is the first one I've seen with knights, with the king, with swords. So I really like that. As for the soundtrack, it needs something. Violins, horns, a harp. I don't know, but it needs something. Not having a soundtrack could add to the ambiance, but that ambiance is more creepy than anything else, and the game itself isn't creepy. There are some elements that could be considered creepy, but as a whole, the game is not creepy. It's just an anomaly detection game with no jump scares. So by not having a soundtrack, the dev is doing himself a disservice, and it needs something. In fact, not having a soundtrack and only having the ambient noises of the fireplace and the door opening and closing and creaking, it made me feel sleepy, and you don't want your player base feeling sleepy, because if they're sleepy, they're not going to want to play the game. So I'm sure there are free assets somewhere where you can get free music that, you know, non-copyright, no royalties, anything like that, but it needs something. Lastly, the time. It took me just under 3 hours to complete, though it's advertised as 20 to 120 minutes. Is it a skill issue on my end? Maybe. I'm not going to say that it's not. I've played a handful of different anomaly detection games. I kind of know how this works. I know what to kind of look for. You know, every game's going to be different, but this isn't my first anomaly detection game. Were some of the anomalies so small that I just didn't recognize them? It's possible. It's entirely possible. I'm not going to say that it wasn't, but could it also have been bugged? I don't know. It is hard to say. But regardless, it took me 3 hours to complete a game that's advertised to be at most 2 hours long. Comparing that to the price, you know, $4 for a game that takes anywhere between let's just say 2 hours, to be fair. It's not a bad price. If you beat it in 20 minutes, you might be a little disappointed that you spent $4 on a 20-minute game. So maybe reduce the game by $1, but then at that point, it's just $1, right? Are you gonna miss $1? It's up to you guys. At the end of the day, Somnus is just like any other anomaly detection game. You walk into a room, you see if there's an anomaly or not, and you either go forward or you go backward. And if you get it right, you progress. If you get it wrong, you go back to 0. While these games are a dime a dozen, what really caught my eye about it is the medieval setting, and I really like that. The biggest issue I really have with it is the lack of soundtrack. Add something to the soundtrack so other people don't fall asleep like I did. If the dev were to add a soundtrack to this, I would feel comfortable rating this a 7 minimum. 7 is pretty average, and this is a pretty average anomaly detection game, though it could be higher because, like I said, the medieval setting is really what sets this game apart from every other anomaly detection game. So if you're on the fence about it, you know, maybe wait until it's 25% off. I think $3 is a fair price for this game. And that's my review of Somnus. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below. But if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also have a Twitch channel and I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, so consider joining me on both of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to both of them in the description below. Lastly, I want to shout out the thumbnail artist for this video. They created this thumbnail for me because they are trying to build a portfolio, and so we just came to an agreement that they would make me a free thumbnail if they get to use it for their portfolio. So if you are interested in a thumbnail like this, go to the description below to find their Reddit account or their email. Their Reddit account is really_myguy_777. Fantastic thumbnail. Thank you again for making this thumbnail for me, and I hope it looks good in your portfolio, man. Thank you. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Grab a sack of quarters because we've got games to play and laundry to do. Released on August 11th, 2022, Arcade Paradise is a laundromat simulator where you are tasked with washing and drying clothes while also operating an underground arcade in the back. You play as Ashley Goldman, daughter of Gerald Goldman, and you are given the responsibility of running your father's laundromat, King Wash, while he is away on vacation floating on his yacht down the Riviera. Wait, Gerald? Riviera? That sounds a little odd, doesn't it? That's because the voice actor of your father, Gerald, is none other than Doug Cockle, the butcher of Blaviken himself, Geralt of Rivia. I just wanted to share this for any Witcher 3 fans out there. Anyway, back to the story. As you play, you upgrade the laundromat more and more while purchasing more and more arcade cabinets, all while keeping the underground arcade secret from your father, who just thinks you've discovered a passion for entrepreneurship of laundromats. Of course, this eventually all comes crashing down, but that's getting into spoilers. At the start of the game, I felt like a teenager again, thinking to myself, my dad doesn't know anything and he's not even here, so who cares what he says? And slowly, that sentiment grew into a sort of resentment at the climax of the story, but it's a pretty solid feel-good resolution at the end. This story is not over the top, but not every story needs to be an Avengers level threat. Some stories can take place in a tiny little laundromat and still be good. Arcade Paradise is proof of that. The gameplay is all about doing boring laundry while filling in the downtime with arcade games. I knew I'd be playing a bunch of various arcade games when I started Arcade Paradise, but what I didn't know about this game is that every little side task is also basically a minigame. The laundry is pretty simple in that you just hold E or whatever your interact button is. Hold E to fill up the washer, hold E to empty the washer, hold E to fill up the dryer, hold E to empty the dryer. However, with the side tasks, those range from pressing E at the right time on the gauge to pick gum off of surfaces, or throwing garbage away in the dumpster, or moving your mouse or joystick to the correct position while plunging the toilet in an attempt to do critical damage like it's a boss fight, or even debugging the arcade cabinets by literally flicking bugs off of the motherboards. This was a fun and unexpected mechanic to the game. However, these tasks became quite repetitive because after about halfway through the story, I just wanted to get in, do my laundry, play some games, make some money, and make some upgrades. The bright side to this is that you can purchase upgrades that can make these tasks easier, but that requires completing various challenges to earn a separate currency that is spent solely on these upgrades. These challenges might pertain to certain arcade cabinets themselves, or you can even get random daily challenges. These upgrades range from everything from upgrading your watch so that you no longer get notifications when a cabinet breaks or when a coin hopper fills up, or you can even hire an employee, which means you no longer have to collect the coins from the arcade hoppers. So there are upgrades that can make the game less tedious, but even then the gameplay can still be quite grindy. With grinding out these challenges while also staying on top of laundry, emptying coin hoppers, throwing out trash, and fixing bugs, it's just a lot to juggle and can feel monotonous at times. On top of that, occasionally I ran into bugs, but for the most part, they weren't that serious. The most common bug I ran into was that the character's model arm would stay extended after emptying a dryer, but the game fixed itself the moment you placed the basket of clean clothes on the pickup table. I did encounter some bugs that were more intense later in the game, but those were much less common. I can really only think of 1 or 2 bugs that were so severe as to cause me to restart the game. So there are some bugs, but by and large, they're nothing to worry about. With those 2 important categories out of the way, let's move on to the AI. Arcade Paradise is on every major console as well as PC, and while it has mouse and keyboard support, it feels like an afterthought. For the most part, the game was playable with mouse and keyboard, but there were some certain occasions that left me annoyed, such as navigating menus on the office computer or even while playing some of the games. It's not like they included mouse and keyboard support at the very end of development, or maybe they did, I don't know, but the support is there. It just feels like they included it, signed off on it, and pushed it out the door without playtesting it. The game does recommend using a controller on the Steam page, and of course it's on other consoles besides PC, but when I discovered mouse and keyboard worked, I decided to stick with it, but by the time I realized mouse and keyboard support was weak, I was already 8 or so hours into the game and I didn't want to relearn the controls. As for the graphics, Arcade Paradise looks fantastic, so long as you aren't looking at the forest for the trees. What I mean is that from a distance, the whole game looks great, but when you get up close and really look at the assets, such as the vending machine or inside the dryers, it can leave a little to be desired as the models look a little flat and the details don't really hold up. If you're looking at screenshots of the game and you're unsure, just know what you see is what you get. The screenshots with the neon lights and arcade cabinets really do look that good, and the screenshots inside the washers and dryers actually look that rough. So long as you aren't pressing your face against every model you see in game, you'll probably appreciate how good everything looks. The soundtrack. To no one's surprise, I'm not going to be including any of the actual music from the game in this video because of potential copyright reasons, but take my word for it, the soundtrack is great. While some of the songs can feel timeless, others feel like they were ripped straight out of the 90s. Some of the music the devs included in their game is completely original, while others are covers of popular songs, such as Can I Play It being a cover of Can I Kick It by a tribe called Quest. Not once did I ever get tired of the playlist in this game. As for the price, Arcade Paradise is sitting at $20 US on Steam. The base game took me about 28 hours to finish while completing 25 of the 54 achievements. There is some replayability to the game, especially if you like achievement hunting, but as for the story, there isn't really anything left after you finish the game. There might be some extra story elements if you 100% complete the game, but that requires, 100% completing the game, and not everyone will want to do that. There is also DLC for the game that provides you with other arcade cabinets to play, you can purchase the soundtrack, and there's even a VR mode, but I did not purchase those, so I cannot speak for them. For the most part, each DLC costs about $2. Assuming those other arcade games are similar to the ones in the base game, I don't know if those DLCs are worth purchasing at full price, but again, I did not purchase them anyway, so that claim is just speculation. Consider buying those DLC when they're on sale or after you finish the game. With all of that said, I give Arcade Paradise a rating of 7.6 sausages out of 10. The story is pretty down to earth about running your father's laundromat while dealing with what feels like his disapproval the entire game. While the story isn't bad by any means, it does seem to take a backseat to the gameplay, and that's okay. To anyone more interested in the story rather than the gameplay, you may be slightly disappointed as you can only progress the story by making money and purchasing arcade cabinets and upgrades for the building. The gameplay is great as everything feels like a minigame. The arcade cabinets are of course games, but even little chores such as throwing away the garbage or plunging the toilet is treated as a minigame as well. Unfortunately, these chores can become quite tiresome until you start completing challenges that can then unlock upgrades that will minimize your time doing those chores. There are some minor bugs in the game, but for the most part, those bugs are not game-breaking and rather something small that can be easily fixed or bypassed. The weakest part of the game though is the UI, assuming you're playing on mouse and keyboard anyway. The mouse and keyboard support feels like an afterthought that was not even play tested. If you end up playing this on PC, I highly recommend playing on a controller because you'll probably have a better experience. Graphically, the game looks great so long as you aren't looking at the forest for the trees. Just give the washers and dryers some personal space and you probably won't have any complaints. The soundtrack is terrific as each song is great, be it from the jukebox or even from the arcade cabinets themselves. My only complaint is that I wish there was a wider selection of songs to pick from, but I'm saying that from a place of greed rather than from a lack of actual music to pick from. As for the price, it's $20 on Steam, and you'll definitely put that many hours into it just finishing the game one time, not to mention if you want to complete every challenge for every arcade cabinet. As for replayability, there may be some, but the story and gameplay are pretty linear because in terms of choices, the only ones you really get to make are choosing where to physically place the arcade cabinets. All in all, the game is worth purchasing at full price, but if you wanted to wait until it's 20% off, I wouldn't blame you there either. I know there are some die-hard Arcade Paradise fans out there, so my goal is not to trash this game. For the most part, I had a really great time. My biggest complaint really is the UI, as the mouse and keyboard support is so abysmal. If the devs could fix it, I would be comfortable rating this game an 8 out of 10 or maybe even higher, but as it sits right now, the mouse and keyboard controls are just so horrible, I just can't justify a higher rating. But aside from the mouse and keyboard controls, this game really is a gem that deserves to be checked out. And that's my review of Arcade Paradise. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, and I have a Discord for casual viewers and content creators alike, so consider joining me on those platforms as well. I'll leave a link for everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my video here. Mahoney out. Released on March 21st, 2025, Metal Garden is a short, atmospheric, 2000s-inspired single-player FPS game where you travel through an overgrown megastructure and discover what lies beyond it. You wake up as a no-name character after crashing a mech you were piloting. From there, you learn that you are in a giant megastructure that covers the entire planet, and after years of searching, there is a rumor of an exit. From here, you set off in search of this exit to discover what lies beyond. While I haven't read the manga, Blame, though I did just reserve all the books at the library, I do get the feeling that this game takes some inspiration from these books. As you play, you slowly piece together the rest of the story, but ultimately, you could beat the game without ever looking for these extra pieces of lore. These extra story elements aren't necessary, but rather they just add a bit of extra context. As for the gameplay, it's entirely FPS with your starter weapons consisting of a knife and a pistol. As you play, you'll eventually discover a shotgun and a sniper, and you can collect grenades as well. In terms of enemies, you'll only encounter 2, though one of them does have a variant, so maybe you could consider it 2.5 enemy types. One enemy shoots you with a pistol, and the variant of this enemy has a laser or plasma weapon in the later game, though as far as I could tell there wasn't any difference in damage. The other enemy type has a giant sword or axe and does melee damage, and because that enemy is up close and personal, they're a bit more tanky and have more health. On the topic of health, I really liked the health mechanics in this game in that when your health bar depletes to 0, rather than dying, you just take damage to a body part, such as I could break my leg, and if I sprinted, I would be at risk of taking more damage, or another damaged body part could make it difficult to aim and my crosshairs would sway back and forth all wobbly. I played this on regular difficulty, and while I definitely think the gameplay was normal or regular, I wondered why I had so many health kits towards the end of the game, and it was because of this mechanic here. You want to keep from hitting 0, which is what the health packs were for, but if you did hit 0, it was not a death sentence but rather a hindrance or handicap. You could even have multiple body parts injured as well, as at one point in the game I had my head, shoulder, torso, and leg damaged, and I was required to find medic stations to heal these broken body parts. There is an easy mode and a hard mode, as well as modifiers that can change your game as well, which I really like, and I think this is an underrated feature that not enough games implement, so kudos to the dev for including something like this. In terms of the art and graphics, the first thing you'll notice is just how gray and bleak the game is. There is some color here and there, such as the grass being green, but for the most part, everything just looks depressing, but I actually like that as it gives a feeling of a futuristic dystopia. There is no sky, just a metal and concrete ceiling. There is no sun, just giant UV lamps, or so the story says anyways, as you actually can't see the lamps. My point is that the art, while depressing, really adds to the atmosphere of this game. Now I will admit, the enemy models did confuse me, as the first enemy type with the pistols and the energy guns looks like a 1776 American colonist patriot, or maybe even a Fallout New Vegas ranger, as they wear a coat and a hat, but if you look closely, their face looks like it has a helmet. The other enemy, the one that does the melee damage, looks like some sort of anthropomorphic cat, and their armor makes them look like a samurai or a terracotta warrior. While I like the designs of both of these, they just don't make sense together. The graphics look like they were ripped straight from the late stages of the PS2 lifecycle, or maybe even early PS3, which tracks because the Steam page does say that it is modeled to look like it was from the mid to late 2000s. I really like this because it almost invokes feelings of nostalgia in me. As for the time, the Steam page says 1 to 3 hours, and I completed this game in just under 2. I was running this on normal difficulty with 0 modifiers, and I did get turned around at one point, but I do think the 1 to 3 hours is accurate depending on your skill level, what difficulty you play on, and if you activate any modifiers or not. With all of that said, I give Metal Garden a rating of 7.5 sausages out of 10. The gameplay is extremely solid, but it also feels just a little empty. Empty might not be the right word. Have you ever seen one of those Michelin 5-star restaurants that bring out a plate that costs $50 and it's a tiny little strip of steak, but it tastes incredible? That might not be a completely accurate metaphor, but I think you understand what I'm saying. That's what this game feels like. Though the gameplay feels great, it just doesn't feel like there was a lot of it. I didn't mind it, of course, but if you're hoping for vehicles or a vast arsenal of weapons, you won't find it here. You shoot 3 different guns and throw grenades, but there isn't much else to do in this game mechanically. You don't drive any vehicles, unfortunately, since you do start the game off beside a broken down mech, and you don't have to worry about hunger, thirst, or a sanity meter since this isn't a survival type game. There is some minor platforming, but besides that, your only real mechanics are shooting enemies and flipping switches. The enemy variety is probably the weakest link in that there are only 2 enemy types, and one of them has a variant that shoots a different type of projectile, but even then, it doesn't really feel that different, which can feel like sort of a letdown at times. There was one boss fight at the very end which was cool, but it also just felt kinda fine. It was tanky, and it had its own attacks and movesets compared to the other 2 enemies, but after I defeated it, I didn't feel any sort of accomplishment. I just thought to myself, cool, I defeated it, what's next? My favorite part of the gameplay were the health mechanics. While I'm sure it isn't a brand new idea, I don't really see this type of mechanic implemented much. Yes, body part wounds are nothing new, but having a body part get injured rather than dying when your health drops to 0 does feel unique and less punishing, and that's what I liked about it. As for the graphics and art, if you don't like PS2 aesthetics or the gray and brown colors of this game, it might not be for you, but personally, I really liked it. The enemy models are a bit strange, as I don't know why we have Android Samuel Adams and Khajiits in the same game, but maybe I'm just nitpicking here. And lastly, the time I got out of it wasn't too bad either, as it took me just under 2 hours to complete. If you want to challenge yourself with the hardest difficulty and the different modifiers, you'll get even more time out of it too, of course. Unfortunately, I feel as if there is not much replayability to this game unless you plan to achievement hunt. There are no other weapon types to collect or use, and more importantly to me, no other endings to play through, so after my 2 hours in the game, I don't really have much reason to start up a new playthrough. So, maybe consider buying this game when it's about 25% off. And that's my review of Metal Garden. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, and I have a Discord for both casual viewers and content creators alike, so consider following me on both of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my video here. Sausage Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Have you ever wanted to press a button to destroy the multiverse? Have you ever wanted to carry around a plushy duck toy with a top hat? Or maybe leading a chair revolution against their table overlords, falling in love with a chair, and making a little chair family is more your vibe. Released on April 16th, 2025, Do Not Press the Button is a first-person narrative-driven game featuring the developer who questions, taunts, and tests you at every turn. You shouldn't press the button, but you'll want to. You'll have control, and you'll have none. Power is in your hands. Or is it? Before we start, I want to mention that this will be an honest review. Now, why do I say honest review? Well, I played a demo a few months back, which I might link somewhere here, but if you check the credits, my name is listed right here as a playtester. I playtested this game, and I just want to give you guys an upfront, honest disclaimer that I received this game for free and I was a playtester. But that doesn't stop me from giving you guys an honest review. With that out of the way, let's start the review. The story is that you just aren't supposed to press the button that'll delete the multiverse. That's pretty much it. You start the game off going through a tutorial so you can learn the controls, and then after that you are told not to push the button, and then after you don't push the button, that's when the game really opens up. You'll go through a bunch of different rooms that have little puzzles and little side plots, but for the most part, the game is about not pushing a button that will destroy the multiverse. As for the gameplay, it's a walking sim led by the narrator. If you're thinking to yourself, man, this sounds a lot like the Stanley Parable, well, you're right. The only difference is that the Stanley Parable has so many different endings and outcomes and paths you can take, while this game is much more linear. In fact, this game pays homage to the Stanley Parable with one of its levels. There's also some minor puzzles and some minor choices and secrets to find, all while enjoying the hilarious narrative. Moving on to the art, like I said previously, this game takes inspiration from the Stanley Parable and maybe even Portal to a degree, and that's reflected in the art. The game is crisp, clean, filled with plenty of different assets, and I didn't get tired of looking at any of it throughout the entire playthrough. Lastly, I want to cover time. This game costs $14 US, and I got about 2 hours of gameplay out of it. There is some replayability to this game if you want to experience different dialogue paths, or if you want to find all the different secrets, or if you're an achievement hunter, but on average, you'll probably spend about 2 hours on a single playthrough. With all of that said, Do Not Press the Button earns a sausage rating of 7 out of 10 sausages. The story is pretty simple in that the whole game revolves around not pressing a button that will destroy the multiverse, but unfortunately that plot takes a backseat to the rest of the other subplots of the game. Subplots might not be exactly the right term. The subplots are small and minor and don't even really feel like plots necessarily, but rather just random one-off experiences. These subplots or one-off experiences or whatever you want to call them, they're not bad by any means. I had a lot of fun playing through this game. But that doesn't change the fact that this game is about not pressing a button that will destroy the multiverse, but feeling like it takes a backseat to everything else. The main plot about not pushing the button does come back periodically as you play, but like I said, it just takes a backseat to everything else, which I found to be just a little bit disappointing. As for the gameplay, if you don't like games like the Stanley Parable, then you might not like this one that much either, but this game is much more linear than the Stanley Parable. There are puzzles to complete and secrets to find, but they're pretty straightforward since there isn't much in the way of mechanics aside from walking, jumping, and interacting with a few items by picking it up and throwing them. There were a couple bugs I ran into, but only one that actually felt game-breaking, but even then, I just had to reload my previous checkpoint and replay the last 5 minutes or so. As for the art, like I said, everything is crisp and clean and takes inspiration from the Stanley Parable in both gameplay and in art. The hallways and corridors you walk down seem pretty generic, but each room you go into has its own unique vibe to it, and I really liked that. Lastly, the time. This game just seems a little bit too pricey for the time I got out of it. Do Not Press the Button costs $14 US on Steam, and I got about 2 hours of gameplay out of it. You could put in another 2 or 3 hours into the game if you really wanted to find all of the secrets and different dialogue paths and complete the achievements. but still, that's $14 for a game you might get 4 to 5 hours out of, assuming you want to replay it. Like I said in the beginning, this is an honest review, and I'm being honest when I say I had a great time playing this, but maybe purchase this game when it's closer to $8 to $10. I could bump the rating up to a 7.5, but that would require the dev to drop the price significantly. I don't think any game deserves a perfect rating, because if it's a perfect game, why would we want to play anything else? Like I said earlier, this is an honest review, and I want to be completely honest and upfront about all this. 7.5 to me is above average. So 7.5 isn't necessarily bad depending on how you look at it, and the way that I want to present it just means it's slightly above average. And that's my review of Do Not Press the Button or You'll Delete the Multiverse. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally. I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Released onto Steam on March 31st, 2025, Merchant 64 is a tiny retro-inspired traveling merchant game where you take control of a merchant as you buy goods at low prices and sell them in different towns at higher prices. You start the game off as a character simply known as Merchant, with a goal of making enough money to move to Merchant Land. And that's pretty much the entire story. There are some side plots that are tied to the gameplay by purchasing items, but again, that's really about it. There isn't too much else to the story. As for the gameplay, you collect items such as junk, you then sell that junk, and with the profit you make from selling junk, you can then buy upgrades in other items. One of the upgrades you can buy is a bigger backpack that allows you to collect a new type of item called stuff, and stuff sells for more than junk does. You then continue selling junk and selling stuff to make more money to then buy another upgrade, which is a bigger backpack, and you can then collect goods, which sells for more than stuff does and more than what junk does. As for the items you can buy, one of them is a card for an inn. The reason this is important is because if you stay in an inn, all of your money and your items are safe, but if you sleep outside on the bench because you don't have an inn card, you can have your items and money stolen overnight while you sleep. It isn't a lot that gets stolen, but it's still enough to really kind of be annoying. That's just one item you can buy. There's a couple others, such as a mask or some boots or a map, and they all have different functions. Now you might be asking yourself, but Sausage, how do I know what towns to sell my items in? Well, in each town there's a bulletin board, and it'll show the prices of all the different items that they're buying that day. As for the soundtrack, it's upbeat and happy, and it fits the Nintendo 64 vibe perfectly, but unfortunately that's all I really have to say about the soundtrack. Now for the art. It doesn't feel exactly like the Nintendo 64, but it definitely has that mid to late 90s vibe to it, be it Nintendo 64, PS1, or Dreamcast. Anyone who grew up in the 80s or the early 90s can definitely feel the nostalgia that this game is trying to invoke. Lastly, the price tag. This game is listed at $7 US on Steam. I got about 2 to 3 hours of gameplay out of it, and there are multiple endings if that's your thing. With all of that said, Merchant 64 earns a rating of 6 sausages out of 10. As for the story, it's short and sweet, but incredibly bare bones. You play as a character known as Merchant, and your goal is to get to Merchant Land. That's it. There are some subplots, but you have to purchase items to experience them, and ultimately, I don't think that they really matter that much. There are multiple endings, but based on the one that I got on my one playthrough, I feel like they don't really matter that much. Maybe some of these multiple endings require you to buy some of the items, but again, do they really matter that much? As for the gameplay, it feels more like a fetch quest or farming items than actual gameplay. The gameplay doesn't feel bad necessarily, but it feels more like a side quest to a bigger game. It feels like I'm trying to farm items to make money so that I can buy a big new sword or a big new gun or a new mount or something, but that payoff never actually comes. As for the soundtrack, it's nice, but there's little to no variety. I know music can be a bit of a challenge to acquire, but there has to be a place to get more music. In total, there might be 3, maybe 4 songs, and the game took me 2 to 3 hours to complete, so that's like listening to the same song on repeat for an entire hour. Now the art is this game's biggest strength. If you grew up in the 80s or the early 90s, you're going to feel some sort of nostalgia playing this game. My only slight issue with the game is that it feels like it's lacking just a little bit of variety. The 3 different towns definitely feel unique, and of course the character models feel unique, but aside from your own merchant and the merchant you sell items to, they all just kind of blended together for me. As for the time, this game is listed at $7 US on Steam, and I got 2 to 3 hours of gameplay out of it. On top of that, there are a handful of multiple endings if that's your thing. But the gameplay just felt kinda bare bones, so I don't know if it's worth replaying to experience one of the other endings. So consider buying this game when it's maybe about 40% off. And that's my review of Merchant 64. If you got this far, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also have a Twitch channel where I live stream occasionally, I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Released onto Steam on April 2nd, 2025, Liminal Department is an anomaly detection game where you are trapped in what seems to be an endless hospital department where you must carefully observe your surroundings in each loop to escape. Now, anomaly detection games are a dime a dozen, starting with Exit 8 and countless copycats, but this one holds its own. Some anomaly detection games have extremely minute anomalies where if you miss it, it'll throw the entire run, and while this game does have some of those, I feel like, because I did miss a few, for the most part, the anomalies are pretty obvious so long as you're actually paying attention. Some of those anomalies might be missing items, signs that are flipped over, different color walls, different color lighting. They're very hard to miss. Also, for anyone who doesn't like jump scares, just know that there aren't really any jump scares in here. There were a few anomalies here and there that did make me jump, but I'm just sensitive to jump scares. So if you're used to playing horror games with jump scares, you probably won't be affected that much. The one thing I really liked about this game is that normally with anomaly detection games, if you miss an anomaly, that's it. You just start back over at 0. With this game, you still start back over at 0, but you get a pop-up window in the bottom right corner that tells you, hey, you missed an anomaly, and then it kind of gives you an idea of what it is, such as a missing item or a supernatural event. No other anomaly detection games that I've played has that, so while it doesn't tell you exactly what the anomaly was, you have an idea of what to look out for, and I thought that was a really nice touch. Lastly, for the gameplay, I do want to mention that this game has a hard mode. You do need to beat regular mode, which is 13 levels, to unlock hard mode, but this is the first anomaly detection game that I've seen that has a hard mode, so that was kind of nice. Moving on to the graphics and art, there isn't too much to say, but I do want to mention that this game was made in Unreal Engine, which is why it looks so nice, and it takes place in a hospital. While neither of these two things are necessarily unique, it does look good, and I haven't played any other anomaly detection game that takes place in a hospital. Lastly, I want to talk about the time. This game costs $5 US, but I got under 2 hours of gameplay out of it, and that's including hard mode. There are achievements for achievement hunters, but I got 7 out of 8 of them without even trying. The last one is beating the game in under 6 minutes, so that one does take a little bit of effort, but for the most part, I didn't even try. With all of that said, Liminal Department earns a sausage rating of 7.3 sausages out of 10. Liminal Department is your average anomaly detection game, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means average. There are a lot of assets, but the anomalies are pretty obvious so long as you're actually paying attention. There's no jump scares either, unless you're sensitive to jump scares, and even then, they're not really even jump scares. And if you miss an anomaly, there will be a pop-up box letting you know, hey, you missed one, and this is kind of what it was. There is a hard mode to the game, but unfortunately, it's not really hard. Hard mode is just adding an extra 3 levels. In normal mode, you have 13 levels to make it through. If you miss an anomaly, you go back to 0, as with most other anomaly detection games. Hard mode, as far as I can tell, is just the same anomalies, but rather than 13 levels, you have to make it to 20. So while I like that they included a hard mode, it doesn't feel like a quote-unquote hard mode. The graphics look great and definitely scratches the Liminal vibe to a degree, but it doesn't necessarily stand out and feel special. While I hate to say it, Liminal Department will easily be lost in the crowd of other anomaly detection games. As for the time, I feel like it's a little bit expensive for the time I got out of it. I was given the game for free, but it does cost $5 US, but I got less than 2 hours of gameplay out of it, and that's including hard mode. My first playthrough of the game on normal difficulty took me about 45 minutes. Hard mode also took me about 45 minutes, but that's because I knew what anomalies to look for. If the developer could lower the price, I would be comfortable bumping up the sausage rating a little more, but it really just depends on how much the price is knocked down. Regardless, this was a really fun anomaly detection game if you would like anomaly detection games, but maybe just wait to buy it when it's on sale. And that's my review of Liminal Department. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, and I have a Discord for both casual viewers and content creators alike, and I'm a curator on Steam, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Released on March 24th, 2025, a game about mowing your lawn is a simplistic game about mowing your lawn. Harvest grass, sell clippings, upgrade your gear, and experience the beauty and detail. As the title suggests, this game is about mowing your lawn. You start the game off with a simple motorized push mower, and as you mow your lawn, you collect your grass clippings, and then you use those grass clippings to sell and make money, and with that money you can then buy upgrades. Not only are there grass clippings, but there are certain items hidden in the tall grass that you can collect and also sell for even more money. Some of these items include pocket watches, or baseballs, or diamonds, but there's also vases hidden, and if you break the vases, you'll find rupees inside, which is a nod to the Legend of Zelda series. Graphically, you can tell that there are low polygons, especially in the trees, but I think that this was intentional. Being that this is a game about mowing your lawn, which is goofy, I think that the developer went with a low polygon style to just go along with the humor. Lastly, we have the price tag. This game costs $5 US, and I got about 38 minutes of gameplay out of this. With all of that said, a game about mowing your lawn earns a sausage rating of 5 out of 10 sausages. I don't know how to give any feedback to this game without trashing it completely. I don't want to be rude, but I also don't want to sugarcoat anything, so I guess I'm just going to point blank say exactly how I feel. The gameplay is horrendous. First, I want to start off with the physics or the controls of the lawnmower. I feel like I could pilot a cruise liner better than I could pilot this lawnmower. While I'm sure that the developer made the controls for this lawnmower goofy on purpose, that doesn't mean it's fun. In real life, I have no issues pushing a lawnmower, but this game is nothing like that. Now, if the developer started off the game with a lawnmower like this, and then you could upgrade your lawnmower to have better handling, that would make sense. But it's just the same lawnmower the entire game, or so I think anyway, which I will touch on in a little bit. As you play, you'll cut grass and find items, and you can sell all of these things for money. Some of these upgrades include sharper blades on your lawnmower, or a bigger bag so you can collect more grass before you have to sell it. One item you can buy is a riding lawnmower, which handles a little bit better than the push mower, but the issue here is that it feels like a tank. I don't know if it's the size of the lawnmower or maybe the position where the camera is placed, but it just feels really big. On top of that, this game is riddled with bugs. To start, let's talk about collision. Some assets have weird collision, such as the house. You don't actually stop at the house, you'll walk through the house and then you'll hit an invisible wall. Or these bushes right here, you just walk right through them. These are pretty minor, but another collision issue I had was that I broke a vase to get the rupees out, and then I walked over it or something, and I got launched super far up in the air. Again, that's not really a big deal. I thought it was comical, but it's still an issue. The biggest issue that I ran into, which is a real issue, is that I was on the riding lawnmower and I ran over a rock and I got stuck. Well, I dismounted from the lawnmower, which, side note, there's no real tutorial to this game, so I had no idea I needed to press space. There is a little bit of text in the bottom right corner saying press space, but I had no idea, so it was trial and error until I just figured it out. Anyway, I ran over the rock and I got stuck, so I got off the lawnmower and it spawned me outside the fence of the yard. Well, this one item does have collision and I can't walk back through the fence. I grabbed the rock and I was able to move it, but when I did that, I also pushed the lawnmower a little too far away, so I couldn't get back on. Because of that, I thought maybe I could walk around the block back to my front yard and then get into my backyard that way. But when I did that, I fell through the map. I was hoping the game might teleport me to my front yard or auto spawn me or something like that, but that never happened. I decided to shut the game off and then restart it, hoping that I wouldn't lose any progress, but when I reloaded the game, I was at the very beginning again because there's no save option. I understand why there wouldn't be a save option for a game that is advertised as only 30 minutes long, but it's still really disappointing that I fell through the map and I had to restart the entire game, especially with such janky controls. Moving on to the graphics and art, it's low poly and looks kinda bad, and I think it's on purpose, but that doesn't change the fact that it just looks bad. I can forgive bad graphics if the gameplay does a little bit more of the heavy lifting, but like I just said, it's riddled with bugs, the controls aren't very good, and overall it's just not good. So as of right now, none of the gameplay can save the graphics. I do want to touch on the soundtrack category, but you may have noticed I didn't mention it earlier. The reason for that is because it's the same song over and over the entire time. Song might not be the right term, but it's the same piece of music looped the entire time. It wasn't bad, but it's the same thing over and over for the entire 30 minutes that I played, and it got kind of tiresome. Lastly, we'll talk about the price. Like I said, it's $5, and I got 38 minutes out of this game. I'll be completely honest, I didn't even beat it either. It isn't because I didn't try or anything like that, it's because I fell through the map and then when I restarted, I had to replay it. And given that the controls are so bad as it is, I just didn't have any desire to actually do it. The Steam page does advertise that this game can be beat in 15 to 30 minutes, and I've got 38 minutes, so I don't know exactly how much is in here, but I have to assume it can't be too much more. Regardless if there is a lot more or not, the controls are just so bad as it is, and with how buggy it is, I just have no desire. Now, I know that some people love to play bad games, and I'm not here to yuck your yum. If you are really interested in this game and everything I've said makes you want to play it even more, then so be it, go have fun. But I do advise you, maybe wait until it's like $2 or $3 instead of $5. And that's my review of a game about mowing your lawn. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also have a Twitch channel where I live stream occasionally, I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm gonna cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Released on April 2nd, 2025, Maya, Cats of Istanbul is a captivating hidden object game set in the cat capital of the world, Istanbul. Explore detailed 3D dioramas of Istanbul's historic and iconic landmarks, and find the adorable cats hidden within them. But the real question is, can you find them all? One quick important note about this game before we get started. When I was talking to the dev, they said their inspiration for this game came from the stray cat they adopted in Istanbul named Maya. Because of this life event that happened to both the developer and Maya, the developer told me part of the money that they make from selling this game will go to feeding and caring for stray animals in Istanbul. The Steam page doesn't say this, so I'm not sure if this is due to a legal reason or something, but I wanted everyone to know that if you do purchase this game, you will be helping animals live a happy, healthy life in Istanbul. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's start the review. Maya, Cats of Istanbul is basically Where's Waldo with cats, or more like 100 different Waldos on 3 different levels. The 3 levels are Galata Tower, Hagia Sophia, and Topkapi Palace. I don't know if I said that right. I don't know how to speak that language. I did my best. I guess I could have Googled it. I'm sorry. Let's move on.
We're sorry.
Like I said, there's 100 different cats, and they're hiding all over the place. They're inside of trees, in windows, trash cans, of course, because that's where you find most cats, sitting on top of cars, you name it. If a cat might be there, it's worth searching. In the top right side of the screen, there is a hint button. It looks kind of like a Blue's Clues, except it's pink. I know there's a pink Blue's Clues dog, a pink blue, a pink, I don't know. But there is a paw print in the top right, and that's your hint button. What I really like about this is that the map is really big, and these itty bitty little tiny kittens are really itty bitty tiny. So it's really hard to find all 100 of them. What I'm getting at is that if you struggle to find all 100 cats like I did, you can press that button and it'll help you find them. The hint button does have a cooldown, but it's only about 60 seconds or so. So if you're struggling to find the last 10 cats, you can press that and then wait another 60 seconds and then you can find another cat. So it's actually quite nice. Moving on to the graphics and art, the color palette is quite cozy. I'm not an artist, I don't know color palettes or anything like that. I know Roy G. Biv and I know hot colors and cold colors. I feel like these are like soft pastel colors, but I don't know if that's right. So if you're an artist, maybe leave a comment below saying, hey Sausage, these are the whatever blend colors, I don't know. But again, the point is they're very soft colors and it's very cozy, very relaxing. My only real critique is that I wish the game had a better lighting and shadow system. The game doesn't look bad at all, but due to the lack of shadows, it can occasionally look just a little bit flat. Moving on to the soundtrack, I don't have too much to say, but I will say that it's relaxing and cozy without really getting boring or repetitive. The amount of music the game provides is minimal, but I would never say no to extra music either. But I never found myself getting tired of listening to the music the game provides. Lastly, I want to talk about the price tag. Maya, Cats of Istanbul costs $3 and I got just under 1 hour of gameplay. There are 3 different levels, so you'll spend about 15 to 20 minutes per level depending on your skill level. I suppose you could speedrun the game if that's your thing, or if you buy this for a kid, they could spend longer on the game, so again, it really just depends on your skill level. It's not a bad price, especially since there's always the possibility that the dev might add more levels later. I don't know this for sure, so I'm just speculating and saying there's always a possibility. I don't know. And then lastly, one more time, I do want to mention that the Steam page doesn't say it, but when talking to the dev, they did tell me that part of the money they earn from this game will go to helping stray animals in Istanbul. How much money that is, I don't know. I don't have those details. I didn't ask for those specifics, but regardless, you're helping, and that just makes me feel good. With all of that said, Maya Cats of Istanbul earns a rating of 7 sausages out of 10. Overall, this game is average, but in the best sense possible. It's a hidden object game with cats. The gameplay is pretty straightforward in that you have to find 100 different hidden cats. The graphics and art isn't bad. My only real critique is that maybe the dev could adjust the lighting and shadow system to give it a little more life. And lastly, $3 for 3 levels isn't bad. Yes, you can complete the levels in as little as 15 to 20 minutes, but there is always the possibility that more levels could be added later, and the fact that the developer is donating part of the profit from each game sold to help stray animals feels good. So if you're unsure about the $3, it's definitely worth picking up on sale. And that's my review of Maya Cats of Istanbul. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally. I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Released onto Steam on June 2nd, 2025, Zefyr, A Thief's Melody, is a game where you play as a young thief studying at the Thieves Guild. In this colorful archipelago, you will investigate kidnappings, steer clear of roaming pirates, or fight them, and sail around the ocean on a turtle. Explore every island, cure sick animals, and uncover the truth during this feel-good journey. Before we start, I want to mention that this review will have major spoilers, so here's your warning. With that out of the way, let's start the review. You play as a character named Iko, or Iko, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his name, but you're a recruit at the Thieves Guild. After doing a little bit of platforming on the Thieves Guild island as part of the tutorial, you're sent on your first mission to go steal an eagle egg. This is also still part of the tutorial, kind of, because at this point you're still doing some platforming, but they've introduced eagles, which kind of act like enemies, kind of. But after that, after you get the egg, you go back to your home island and your sister wants you to go buy fabric for her fashion contest. This is where the story really begins, because at the fashion contest, your sister and a bunch of the other contestants are all kidnapped by pirates. From there, you go on a bunch of different adventures in an attempt to rescue your sister. If that story kinda sounds like a game that you may have played on the GameCube back in 2002, well, you're not wrong. This game takes heavy inspiration from The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, Beyond Good and Evil, Okami, Sly Cooper, and a bunch of other games. Now, I've only played Wind Waker, I didn't play any of those other games, but I definitely see where the developer is coming from in both graphics and art and gameplay with this game. The first item you really get, they're not really items, it's more of just a flat out mechanic that's going to be in the game, but one of the first items you get are magnet claws, and that allows you to stick to surfaces so that you can climb up walls. As you play, you'll collect tools and upgrades such as a bow staff for combat, or the ability to swim in water, a turtle mount that allows you to traverse the oceans, a bow and arrow, bombs, and even a grapple at the very end of the game. Going back to the bow staff, the main form of combat in this game is using the bow staff to perform light and heavy attacks. The light attack is rapidly pressing the left mouse button, while the heavy attack requires charging by pressing and holding the right mouse button. You can't really string combos together except for spamming the left mouse button, but that's kind of okay. I did use the heavy attack occasionally, but it was only when an enemy saw me and I hid behind a corner, so they would have to come run up beside me and then I would charge it to hit them. With that said, you are encouraged to sneak and hide as you play. Moving on to the bow and arrows, I did start using it towards the end of the game to take out enemies from a distance if I didn't want to engage with them with the bow staff. I would just snipe them from a distance and then just move on. Aside from that, there wasn't much else in terms of combat using the bow and arrows. There were some mechanics that were in the game, such as shooting a switch from across the map, but that was about it. There is a slingshot that did the same thing, so this just felt like a slightly modified slingshot, and that's okay, but like I said, it kind of had a very niche purpose. There were also bombs, but I never really used that for combat. There were a few rubble piles here and there that you needed to use the bombs to blow up to move on to a new area, but as for combat, I didn't really use the bombs. There is a different type of bow and arrow that uses magic, but I only really use those for the robots because it would one-shot the robots. Besides that, it had a few other mechanics in the game, such as crystals, like from The Legend of Zelda, where you would have to shoot a crystal to activate it. The magic bow kind of served that purpose, but aside from that, again, it had a very niche purpose. And then, like I said, there's a grapple that you can unlock at the very end of the game, and I really enjoyed using it. Before finishing the game, I wanted to go back to all the different islands and re-explore them to try to find all the different collectibles, and the grapple made it such a breeze. Normally, as you play, you have to run here, you have to climb that, you gotta go over here, but with the grapple, you can just aim and shoot and traverse so easily. It was very fun. Moving on, I want to talk about the various different side quests in the game. There are a few side quests that you just complete as you play without even really trying because it's not required, but it's still tied to the story, so they just kind of happen. But there are 2 side quests that you have to actually put in effort to complete, and that's finding all 654 different flowers and healing all the different animals in the game. You can buy these items that are kind of like sensors. I don't know if that's the right word, but you can buy these items and then on your main map, it'll show you on all the different islands where there's chests, where there's paintings, animals, and different flowers. So while there are 654 flowers and it sounds daunting, having this upgrade really helps you to narrow down where you've looked and where you haven't. One of the last things I want to mention about the gameplay is that there are 3 alternate outfits that you can find and unlock as you play. When you start the game, you have this blue outfit that doesn't do anything. It doesn't have any perks or anything like that. It's just a standard outfit. But one of the outfits you can get allows you to be a little more quiet when you sneak, so the enemies can't hear you. Or another one allows the enemies to have a harder time spotting you. I think it just takes longer for them to spot you. But my favorite outfit is this one right here that allows you to run faster after running for a few seconds. It really made traversing all the different islands just a little bit quicker. Lastly, I do want to mention that this game is playable with mouse and keyboard, control, and Steam Deck if you have one. Moving on, let's talk about the graphics and art. Growing up, I was a big Nintendo kid, and so when I first saw this game, my first thought was, hey, that looks like the Wind Waker, and man, does it really look good. I absolutely love the cell shading, I love the ocean aesthetic, and I love the water shimmer in this game. There's a setting where you can turn water shimmer on or off. I recommend turning it on if your PC can handle it. Going back to the cell shading, I mean, it's just timeless. It looks good. Yes, you can say that the Wind Waker was upgraded to HD, but I feel like that's a little bit different. The original game still looks pretty good. I mean, it's dated, of course, but it holds up better than most other games from 2002, so the developer going with cell shading was a really good idea. For just a moment, I want to touch on the soundtrack. There's not a lot of music in this game, but what the game does provide is really nice. The music that the game does have, I really enjoyed. I just wish there was more of it. Lastly, let's talk about the time. This game costs $25 US, and the Steam page says you'll get about 10 to 15 hours out of it. I myself got just over 17 hours out of the game, but that's because I ran into a couple bugs that I wanted to address with the developer so he could fix it before it gets released, but also I wanted to find all the different collectibles as well. With that said though, I did only complete 97% of the game, but before you guys pull out pitchforks or exit out of the video, please just hang tight and I'll explain why. With all of that said, Zefyr, A Thief's Melody earns a rating of 7.4 sausages out of 10. I really enjoyed the story, but it just felt minimal. The overall goal was to rescue my sister, but rather than having big story elements happen, it just felt like extra steps being put into the quest. I had to save my sister, but I had to go rescue this person first, and then I had to go steal this key, then I had to go investigate a factory, but before I can investigate, I have to go get a new weapon or ability. These elements aren't bad, nor was the story, but it didn't feel like the story was evolving. The gameplay is extremely solid, but I do have a couple recommendations on how to make it better. First, this game desperately needs a minimap. It got so tiresome opening up my big map just to orient myself in the correct direction. Having a minimap to tell me which direction I am facing and if there are any collectibles nearby would be a great benefit to this game. Second, better rewards for completing the game. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to turn into the completionist for a moment without the tax fraud. Sorry, alleged tax fraud. In this game, there are 33 paintings to collect, a bunch of animals to cure, and over 600 flowers to collect. The things I'm about to address, I talked to the developer about specifically, so this is coming straight from the source. The 33 paintings in the game? Yeah, they don't actually do anything. They're purely collectible. The developer wanted to make a side quest for it, but they kind of ran out of time, and I understand that, but I still wish that there was something for collecting all 33. As for the 654 flowers, one of them was bugged, so I had to talk to the developer and they were able to send out a little patch so I could get the final last one. But once I got the last one and I went and sold it to the flower girl, that's it. Nothing really happened. There was a quest and the quest was now complete, but there was nothing else. So as I was looking at the paintings and the flowers and noticing that I had 100% completed certain other areas of the game, such as the inventory, I was thinking to myself, why should I go get the rest of the animals? Because I assume I'm not going to get anything for completing that quest either. I have all the suits, I have all the different weapons, I have all the different abilities. There's nothing else to unlock. The only thing I would unlock by completing the game is getting an achievement. While I don't necessarily think that there should be a reward for 100% completing a game, though having one is nice, I do like to be rewarded for completing quests. This game doesn't have any sort of experience or anything like that, but I do wish that I got something for completing these different quests, and I got nothing. You do get money for selling all the different flowers, so you can collect all 654 flowers and sell them for money, but when I beat the game, I had over 6,000 rupees, or actually they're called magnetites, but my wallet was full. I had nothing to spend it on, so again, I didn't really get anything out of that except money, but I was already stockpiled, so yeah, I didn't really get anything out of it. So again, why should I go cure all the sick animals? I'm not going to get anything out of it. Moving on to the different outfits, the one I liked the most was the one that gave the speed boost, but small complaint here, when you jump, you lose the speed boost, which is kind of annoying a little bit. I would recommend just keeping the speed boost if you do jump, but again, small complaint. The other two outfits, while they do operate differently on a mechanics level, I feel like they still served a similar purpose, and I didn't really use them that much. One outfit allows you to sneak more quietly, so it makes it harder for the enemies to spot you, while the other one allows you a little bit extra time to hide behind cover if the enemy does spot you before being alerted. So like I said, while they do operate differently on a mechanics level, they still kind of feel the same. With all those things said, I do think it would have been nice to make the outfits a reward for completing these quests, rather than just finding them randomly in chests as you play. Was it nice to find these outfits? Absolutely, but I didn't feel like I earned them. But then with the quests, I feel like I put in work and I didn't get any reward. So maybe the developer can make these outfits the rewards for the quests. Just an idea. So overall, the gameplay is great, but it's not perfect. I do think it can be improved on just a little bit. As for the art and graphics though, this is the game's greatest strength. If you grew up playing Wind Waker, you will absolutely love the way this game looks. The only thing I would change is adding more NPCs, though that's tiptoeing on gameplay. The game feels empty, and I would have enjoyed having more NPCs to talk to, or at least to make the game appear more lively. The weakest link of this game is the soundtrack. The music the game does include is fantastic, but unfortunately, it's few and far between. The short and simple answer is that the game needs more music. There's no other way to say it. As for the time, the dev says you'll get 10 to 15 hours out of the game. I got 17, but that's because I was chasing a full completion of the game. Since there is no reason to complete the game at the time of this review, you will get something closer to 10 to 15 hours out of it. That said, could the game be a little cheaper? Yeah, maybe, like $20, but if the dev were to include completion bonuses to the game, pushing the playtime to 15 to 20 hours, then $25 would definitely be worth the price. Again, $25 isn't a bad price, but if you wanted to wait until this was 20% off, I wouldn't blame you there either. If the developer could implement any of these changes with a mini-map or more music, with completion rewards, or maybe even NPCs, I could definitely see this game earning a 7 out of 10 or maybe even a little bit higher. But as it sits right now, 7.4 isn't a bad rating. The game isn't perfect, but man, it's still really good. As a fan of Wind Waker, I can say with confidence that this game was a ton of fun to play and I had a hard time putting it down. It is fantastic, but there is definitely room for improvement, and I really hope the dev can make these changes. The game is good, but it can do better, and I hope that happens. And that's my review of Zefyr: A Thief's Melody. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally. I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Released on September 28th, 2023, Randoville is a medieval chill builder where everything is decided by your luck. Will you get a shabby hut or a gorgeous palace? Throw D20 and find out. So, Randoville is a medieval city builder based around the mechanic of rolling a D20. You roll a D20 to build various buildings such as houses, markets, lumber mills, stone quarries, etc. And the higher the roll is, the more resources you get out of it. So if I were to roll a 16 when I'm trying to plant a lumber mill, I would get like 6 wood per second from that, or something along those lines. But if I rolled something like a 3, I would get maybe like 1 or 2 lumber per second. On top of that, there's only 2 map types. There's islands and valleys, and after about level 20, I felt as if the game stagnated. I got to a point in the game where I didn't know where to go. I could create iron ingots at the blacksmith, but I didn't know what they were used for. I could create leather, allegedly, at the farm, but it didn't show up at the top of my screen under my resources, so I don't know if I was actually getting leather or not. I was very confused. There is a tutorial at the main menu, but it doesn't say anything about these 2 resources, so like I said, I got to a point where I was allegedly getting these resources, but I didn't know what to spend them on, and the game kind of flatlined. I was confused, I had no idea what to do. As for the graphics, for a game with such a silly and simple mechanic, I think it looks fantastic. The characters are little cubes, But my favorite part of the entire thing is that when characters walk, they create little paths, so it feels very lived in, and I really like that. Moving on to the soundtrack, it's pretty non-existent. There's music at the main menu, but as you're playing, I'm not sure if it's quiet or if there's just no music at all. When there is music, it's quite nice, but it's extremely minimal. Lastly, let's talk about the time. This game costs $15 US, and I got just under 2 hours of gameplay out of it. Now, you can regress your town, your civilization, your settlement, whatever you want to call it. You can go back to 0, and you can take your resources with you. But like I said, once I got to level 20, and I was getting leather, allegedly, and iron ingots, and I didn't know what to spend them on, I'm just kind of thinking to myself, what's the point of going back to 0? I got no indication that there was any benefit to this. And one last little tidbit about this game, it hasn't been updated in over a year. I don't know if it's been abandoned or the developer just hasn't put anything out. I don't know, but it's kind of a bad sign. With all of that said, Randoville earns a sausage rating of 4.5 sausages out of 10. It feels like there's an idea for the game here, but it's kind of weird. It's not quite a demo, but it's not quite a finished playtest. It's in this weird area where you can play it, but it doesn't feel complete. It's quite strange. The game has potential, but without quests or a real sense of progression, the game just feels flat, unfinished, and no real sense of direction on what to do besides rolling a die and balancing your resources. The game doesn't look bad either, though my only small complaint is that the characters being shaped like cubes. It's comical, but I'm not sure if I like it. It might just be a personal preference. The soundtrack they did include is nice, but it isn't really anything special, and it's incredibly lacking. The game is also quite expensive for the time I got out of it. $15 US for just under 2 hours, that's a pretty steep price. It hasn't been updated in over a year either, so I doubt the developer is going to be coming back to it anytime soon. It's probably a dead game, but I don't know for sure. So if you really want to buy it, maybe wait until it's at least 75% off, but hey, that's your money, not mine. And that's my review of Randoville. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally. I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Released on August 16th, 2024, Elevator Warp is a game with a simple goal. Take the elevator to floor 6. But this is no ordinary elevator. Who knows which random floor you'll end up at? A hotel, a dungeon, a hedge maze, maybe a train. You'll need to check the clues on each floor to be able to progress and achieve the perfect run. So, Elevator Warp, it's like an anomaly detection game, but rather than finding anomalies, you are searching for a hidden number that correlates to that level. Such as, if you're on floor 4, you are looking for something that has the number 4 on that level. If you can't find the 4, let's say you find a 3, or a 1, or a 6, or maybe there's no number, you would go back into the elevator and you would press the exclamation point, saying that, hey, something's not quite right, and then you would go back to floor 4 to try again. But if you were on floor 4 and you saw something that correlates to the number 4, you would then go back into the elevator, press the up button to move to floor 5. There are 6 different floors, but one mistake will take the player back to the first floor, so that's kind of where the anomaly detection aspect comes in. Now, I don't know if it's a skill issue or not, but not all numbers are obvious. Sometimes I just had to guess. Moving on to the graphics, it's not bad. I have definitely seen worse games, and coming from a solo developer, this game is surprisingly good to look at. Each level has its own vibe too. Sometimes it's a hedge maze, a train, sometimes you're in space. I think that's what this is. Either way, each floor just feels unique, and it's really nice. Lastly, let's talk about the time. Elevator Warp costs $3.99 on Steam, and it took me just under 15 minutes to beat the game, though I'm not sure if that's based on luck or not. There is a marathon mode that requires you to complete all the different floors to win, but I'm not sure if I care enough to attempt it. Some of you may like this game and you may love the challenge of doing the marathon mode, but personally, like I said, I'm just not sure if I care enough. With all of that said, Elevator Warp earns a sausage rating of 6.6 sausages out of 10. I like the premise of the game, I just think it needs a little more time in the oven, or maybe a bit of polish. The game has potential, it's just not quite there yet. The game feels like it's missing something, but I don't know what that something is. The game looks great, but I did only get 15 minutes out of it. You can play marathon mode and you'll get more time out of it, but overall, $4 for 15 minutes, that's pretty steep. If you wanted to wait until a summer sale or a winter sale, I wouldn't blame you there either. And that's my review of Elevator Warp. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a little comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Released on March 31st, 2025, My Liege is a game where you play as a lord of the smallest noble house in the kingdom, and you must lead your people and family through turmoil. In this choose-your-own-adventure RPG, can you grow your influence while keeping neighbors from taking over thy lands? Pick everything from house name, sigil, and commands for your house. I went into this game not really sure what to expect, and honestly, I was just slightly pleasantly surprised. My Liege is a medieval choices matter narrative RPG with light resource management, such as gold, food, honor, military, and morale. The core loop of the game is that you have to make choices while also managing your kingdom's resources, and it's interesting how this all plays out. Some of the choices you make might increase your gold, but it's also going to lower your morale, so you have to juggle these resources with your choices. So not only is it a choose-your-own-adventure format, but it has occasional consequences if you're not careful. With that said, some decisions felt impactful, especially in the second and third acts, while others maybe not so much. The resource management mechanic adds some depth, but it never really gets complex necessarily. It's just something that you kind of have to juggle without really being too worried about it. Moving on to the graphics and art, the character models look like little Playmobil toys, and at first I wasn't sure how I felt about it. I thought, maybe it was a little bit lazy, but then as I played, it kind of grew on me, and I began to like it. It was kind of funny in like a little cute way. The UI is pretty simple, it's clean enough. I have no real issues with the UI, everything's pretty straightforward, so no complaints there. And the backgrounds and the menus and all that are pretty functional, so again, no complaints. Overall, the aesthetic is not too bad. Moving on to the soundtrack, it definitely fits the medieval vibe. Some tracks genuinely stood out and added to the tone, while others kind of faded into the background. They were forgettable, but they weren't bad. I want to be clear on that. Those bad tracks didn't really affect the experience one way or another, but they were just kind of forgettable. Lastly, let's talk about the price tag. My Liege is listed on Steam at $15 US, and I got just under 3 hours of gameplay out of it while achieving 17 of the 38 achievements in a single playthrough. Now, there might be some replayability to this game because of the choices matter mechanic, but I'm not sure. Now, you could say, well, Sausage, why don't you just replay it? Well, I enjoyed it, but I don't know if I want to replay it right now, especially if I don't know if there's that much variety in a second playthrough. Will different people die? Will different kingdoms come to power? How much difference is there in a second playthrough? I don't know. With all of that said, My Liege earns a sausage rating of 7.2 sausages out of 10. The choices and the corresponding consequences I encountered in this game were genuinely interesting, but I don't really feel any strong reason to replay the game because it was about 3 hours long and I don't know if there's that much variety. The game had fantastic writing, and the idea of managing a kingdom with a choose-your-own-adventure mechanic and resource management was pretty fun. I enjoyed the Playmobil look of the characters, though I would understand if other people didn't. It's a personal preference. The soundtrack definitely had some good songs, while others were pretty forgettable. The price also seems just a little bit high. If you replayed the game, you might get 5 or 6 hours in total out of it, so maybe wait until the game is on sale for, maybe $10. My Liege isn't a bad game, but it didn't necessarily leave a mark on me either. It's pretty average. It's not good. It's not bad. It's pretty middle of the road. If you like medieval games, if you like choose your own adventure games, if you like games with a slight resource mechanic, you might really enjoy this game. But if you don't like those elements, you might not. You know what you like. If you see this and you're wondering, I think I might like that, then you probably will. But if you're looking at it and you're thinking, I don't know, sausage, well, that's your answer. So maybe just wait until it's on a slight discount. That's all I've got to say. And that's my review of My Liege. If you got this far, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a little comment below. But if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally. I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Released on April 16th, 2024, Unnamed Project is a game about playtesting. You are the player whose job is to explore a game developer's projects and touch everything possible. So, Unnamed Project feels like a great value brand version of the Stanley Parable, though that is offensive to Walmart. Unnamed Project advertises multiple paths, and while there are multiple paths, they all funnel back to the same ending, making it feel deceptively linear. The dialogue is also unskippable, which becomes frustrating pretty fast, especially when the voice actor tries too hard to be funny, but mostly he just comes off as annoying. I did encounter one bug that caused the movement to lock up, and it forced a full restart, which, as we all know, is not great for immersion or pacing. Moving on to the graphics, it's built with this generic, overused asset. I don't know what this is, but nothing stands out visually. I don't know if these are Godot specific assets, but that's the engine this game was made in. The graphics aren't bad, but we see these graphics and assets in countless other indie games. I don't know if these graphics and assets are default in Godot, or they're free, or they're just easy to work with, or maybe all three, but I think you know what I mean when I say that they're just generic and overused. Lastly, let's talk about the time. This game is listed at $4 US, and my first playthrough took me about 20 minutes. I did replay it 2 more times, not counting the run that I encountered the bug, just to see what alternative paths and endings the game has. Spoiler alert, it's one ending as far as I know. I also only earned 17 of the 36 achievements across all 3 playthroughs. So the game is not a huge time sink in any way, but it's limited in its depth and replay value. With all of that said, Unnamed Project earns a sausage rating of 5.3 sausages out of 10. I'm gonna be completely blunt here. Unnamed Project lacks polish, originality, and the value is just not very good for the amount of time you get out of this. To be completely honest, this score feels too high, but these are the numbers I got. My opinion, just don't buy this game unless it gets a massive overhaul in the gameplay department. And that's my review of Unnamed Project. If you got this far, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a little comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally. I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut the review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Released on November 12th, 2024, Liminal Universe is an exploration game that delves into the depths of loneliness. Wander through empty rooms, search for signs of an abandoned world, and listen to the sounds around you. No dangerous chases, just silence and an empty world to explore. So, Liminal Universe is a walking simulator, which is to be expected. If you got this game and you're surprised that you're walking, I think that's on you, but I just wanted to say that. With that said though, the first half is almost entirely pool rooms. That's not necessarily a bad thing if you do like the pool rooms, but just be aware the first half is mostly water and tile. There are a few other areas, such as some children's play areas, and the second chapter is mostly a dream core area, but it is mostly pool rooms and dream core. That's it. Let's get my biggest gripe out of the way first. It's the sprint key. You can toggle sprint with the G key, but why a game in 2025 does not have automatic toggle sprint is beyond me. Maybe there are some people out there who don't want to toggle their sprint, and I think that they might be sociopaths, because why would you want to hold down the sprint key for an hour straight? I don't know, but just be aware there is a toggle button, but just go into the settings to look at it first. With that said, there are only 2 chapters to this game. Chapter 1, you are in a pool room hub world, kind of. There's some different doors you can go into, and when you complete that little area, you go back to the hub, and it's all pool rooms. There's one area that's kind of a children's play area, but for the most part, it's pool rooms. Moving on to Chapter 2, there are some more pool room areas, but it also moves into a nice little snowy outdoor area, which was my favorite part. But the game ends with an extremely long dream core area that took over 30 minutes to get through, and that's while sprinting, which, remember, I didn't realize there was a sprint toggle button until after the game, so I held down the sprint toggle button running through this dream core area for 30 minutes. I will say there are no jump scares, but there are a few tense or creepy moments that kind of left me a little bit anxious, but there aren't any jump scares. So if you don't like jump scares, kind of like me, you're safe. Don't worry about them. Moving on to the graphics and art, this game might as well be called the Pool Rooms universe, because it feels like 40% pool rooms, 40% dream core, and then 20% everything else. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but again, if you don't like the pool rooms, or if you don't like dream core, or if you're hoping for a little more variety, there just isn't any, really. This game was built using Unreal Engine, and so visually, it's extremely solid, but again, remember, it's mostly pool rooms, so all you're really going to see is water and tile, and then the dream core area has you up in the skies with some clouds, but again, still more tile. Lastly, the time. Liminal Universe costs $4.80 on Steam, and I got about an hour and a half of gameplay out of it. There are achievements to this game, and on my one and only playthrough of the game, I earned 12 of the 13 achievements, so if you're an achievement hunter, you might get a good time out of that. With all of that said, Liminal Universe earns a sausage rating of 6.3 sausages out of 10. Liminal Universe could be better if it got rid of some of the pool rooms and the long dream core portion at the very end, but doing that would require a full rework of the entire game, and let's be real, that's probably not going to happen. If you're into liminal spaces, or more accurately, pool rooms with some dream core and some actual liminal spaces sprinkled in, maybe pick this game up when it's about 40% off. The game's not great, but I don't know if I would consider it necessarily bad either. It's just another dip in a liminal pool. And that's my review of Liminal Universe. If you got this far, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a little comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Ever wonder what it would be like if an anomaly detection game in a roguelite had a cursed little baby? Liminal Exit dares to find out, and it mostly just left me wondering why I was stuck in an elevator again and again and again. Let's talk about that. Liminal Exit is your classic anomaly detection game where you have to see if something is off and then make a choice. There are 3 floors in total, the first one requiring 4 successful levels, the second floor requiring 5, and then floor 3 requiring 6. And the catch? Well, if you miss one, you're not just sent back to the start of the first level of that floor, you're sent all the way back to floor 1, level 1, the very beginning of the game. This applies to the default mode, or normal, or non-assist mode, because there's another mode called assist mode. In assist mode, if you get one wrong, you're not sent all the way back to the beginning of the game, you're just sent back to the beginning of that floor. The catch here, though, is that if you do assist mode, it locks the quote true ending. So assist mode feels more like it should be the regular difficulty or normal, and the default mode or non-assist mode should be hard mode. And to add insult to injury, there's long load times between levels, with each elevator ride feeling what feels like about 10 seconds. That means with all the different levels on all 3 floors, not including the base level to show you what a normal level looks like, that's 18 transitions, give or take. And with 10 seconds, that's at least 3 minutes where you just sitting there doing nothing. It's just dead time. I actually playtested this game twice. I have a first look video somewhere around here, but I gave them feedback about this roguelite approach, and the devs confirmed this is intentional. Moving on, there was one anomaly on floor 2 that involved something about not seeing something, or so the television said. It basically just said, I didn't see that, you didn't see it either, right? So it made me think, there's something there that I didn't see. I just couldn't figure it out, so I never got that anomaly resolved. I don't know if it was a bug or just a really obscure design choice, but there was one anomaly, actually a couple, that I just couldn't figure out, which meant being sent all the way back to level 1, floor 1, and replaying the whole game all over again. I didn't include a story category to this review because there is some story and world building to the game where you're guided by a program named Sam who wants to help you reach, quote, bliss, but it feels undercooked. You do get some more crumbs of world building as you play, but by the end of the game, I did not feel like the story was really fleshed out in any meaningful way. Let's move on to the graphics and art. Liminal Exit was made in Unreal Engine, which is why it looks good, it has clean lighting, and a great atmosphere. This game is not exactly the pool rooms, but it's definitely pool room adjacent. Floor 1 is an indoor pool area with diving blocks and a lifeguard tower. Floor 2 is a locker room and showers, and floor 3 is a flooded subway station. This game feels properly liminal, eerie, and off without relying too hard on cliche visuals. Lastly, let's talk about the time. Liminal Exit took me just over an hour and a half to beat. It costs $6 US, and I got 2 of the 8 achievements, though I did complete all 3 floors. In fact, one of them didn't even unlock the first floor achievement, which is the very first level, so I don't know what's going on with that. I did replay the game a second time on the assist mode because there's supposed to be a second alternate ending, but I'm missing achievements for both endings, and I'm missing achievements for other anomalies that I know that I triggered. I don't know if these achievements are bugged, or maybe they're locked behind a post-launch system, or I don't know what the issue is, but I should have 6 of the 8 achievements, and I've only got 2. With all of that said, Liminal Exit earns a sausage rating of 6.6 sausages out of 10. Liminal Exit is a great concept, it has clean visuals, and some really neat vibes. But the hardcore roguelite anomaly detection gameplay loop, that I'm calling it anyway, really drags the experience down. Assist mode should have been the default, regular, normal mode, and then the non-assist mode should have been hard mode. I know I'm nitpicking about this, but names and titles do matter. This game might also have some bugs, I'm not entirely sure. There's some achievements that I should have that I don't, and the unclear endings don't really help either. Liminal Exit is a cool idea wrapped in a frustrating loop. I like what Liminal Exit was going for with the oppressive feeling and the subtle storytelling, but the execution just makes it feel more like a chore than a challenge. I got the same ending twice on assist mode and non-assist mode, and I still don't know if that's a design choice or a bug, or maybe I'm just misunderstanding something. There's potential here, especially if it gets patched or expanded post-launch, but right now, it's just an interesting anomaly detection game, just not one I'm in a rush to replay. And that's my review of Liminal Exit. If you got this far, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a little comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. There are bad racing games, and then there's Tire Fire Rally. I went in hoping for chaos, and I got that, just not the kind I was hoping for. In Tire Fire Rally, there's only 3 tracks total, each with a couple unique hazards. The hazards are always in the same spots and occur in the same order with zero randomization, making each replay feel identical. There are 3 different game modes, being Time Trial, which is pretty self-explanatory, you just race by yourself and try to get the best time. There's Arcade, which is casual single races with no goal or reward in mind. And then there's Grand Prix, or... actually, I'm not gonna say that. I don't know if they're trying to be funny, but let's just move on. This mode is the main mode. This is your bread and butter. It requires you to come in first on all 3 tracks across all 3 different difficulties. Here is where I really start to take issue with the game. There are no rewards whatsoever for winning. There's no new tracks, no new vehicles, and not even cosmetic skins for the different vehicles. There's also no visible stats for any of the vehicles. While they seem to handle differently, there's no way to really compare it without actually just getting in there and playing with that vehicle. The controls are not explained either, which isn't a big deal because it's just WASD and you can press Q to reset your car, but you're left to just figure that out yourself. There's also no minimap either, which again isn't really a big deal, but I would just like to know where all the other drivers are in the race. Lastly, there is local multiplayer, but that requires sharing a keyboard, and that just feels more like a novelty than an actual feature anyone would use. Moving on to the graphics and art, the visuals are retro and pixelated, which can work, but it just feels a little bit, I don't know, underdeveloped. Maybe that's the right word? The environments lack variety and flair, which I'm not going to say feels like the bare minimum was done, but they could have done more. The only visual personality comes from the different vehicles and the hazard designs. One vehicle looks like the car from Beverly Hills Cop because, well, it's a cop car. Another one looks like it came from the Dukes of Hazzards, and then everyone's favorite vehicle called If It Doesn't Fit, You Must Acquit. The pixel art doesn't have to mean simple, but this game often just feels empty and lifeless. Lastly, let's talk about the time. Tire Fire Rally costs $2 on Steam, and it took me 45 minutes to beat every single Grand Prix difficulty, try out Time Trial and Arcade modes, and test every single vehicle. Even for a budget title, it's shockingly thin on content. With all of that said, Tire Fire Rally earns a sausage rating of 5 sausages out of 10. Tire Fire Rally just feels like a glorified demo, something that should still be in early access. At an absolute minimum, this game needs more tracks, randomized hazards, and some form of unlockable rewards. Hey guys, Sausage here. Quick little note, while I was editing this review, there was an update to Tire Fire Rally which I wanted to look at. This update comes with 2 new tracks and 3 new cars. I'll admit I didn't test out the cars, but I did test out the 2 new tracks. Is it nice that the game introduced 2 new tracks and 3 new cars? Yes, but it doesn't fix any of the problems that it already has. This update does not add any sort of rewards whatsoever, so this didn't really feel that important. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that because if you're watching the review and you say, "Oh, Sausage, there is an update." Yeah, I know, I tried it. Anyway, let's get back to the review. Mahoney out? Kind of, not really. Anyway, let's get back to it. If the developer could add these different things to the game, it would add a lot more replayability. So, the $2 price tag makes it tempting, but don't be fooled. This is $2 you'll wish you'll spent elsewhere. And that's my review of Tire Fire Rally. If you got this far, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a little comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. 5 minutes Until Self-Destruction is a short-lived space escape game with randomized puzzles. It's decent, it's fun, but it's gone before it ever really gets going. You are aboard some sort of spaceship and you have 5 minutes until it self-destructs. Your goal is to reach the escape pod before the spaceship blows up, but to do that you must solve a handful of puzzles. Completion of the first puzzle will open a door elsewhere that will allow the player access to a second puzzle. That puzzle will then give you a code to open a door here or extend a bridge there, and rinse and repeat this until you are able to deactivate the self-destruct sequence and board the escape pod. However, the solutions to the puzzles are randomized, so don't think that you can just memorize the solutions because they are always different. or at least there are a handful of solutions to each puzzle, so it will be hard to memorize all of them. This is considered chain style progression, where one puzzle opens the path to the next. It's a basic loop of solve this puzzle, open access to this, move there, and then just repeat until you beat the game. Moving on to the graphics and art, as I said, you are stuck aboard a spaceship, and honestly, it looks decent. It might feel a little bit empty, and that's because it is, but empty doesn't necessarily mean bad. It is a short game, so expect minimal graphics and art, but for what it does have though, it does look good. The visual style is clean, but it doesn't particularly stand out either. Lastly, let's talk about the time. This game costs $2 on Steam, and it took me 3 attempts to beat it, and I completed it in about 15 minutes. You are on a timer, so you will need to rush to get it done, but in the time and attempts it took me to beat the game, it isn't necessarily that difficult. Difficult for a child? Probably. But a grown adult? Maybe to some, but it isn't impossible. There aren't any achievements either, and I suppose that is okay, but just know that if you are an achievement hunter, well, there are none. With all of that said, 5 minutes until self-destruction earns a sausage rating of 6.3 sausages out of 10. The gameplay isn't bad, it's just minimal. Walk here, complete a puzzle, walk somewhere else, complete another puzzle. The game looks great, but it isn't anything special either. It's just small, so there isn't a lot included visually. The weakest link is that the game costs $2, and you might be saying, sausage, it's only $2, stop being a Scrooge. And you're right, but $2 for a game that I beat after 3 attempts in only 15 minutes? Unless the developer plans to add new levels, I just don't see $2 for 15 minutes that I will ever revisit really being worth it. The core concept is pretty solid, but the short runtime makes the $2 price tag feel steep unless more content is added. The game is good for a quick burst of puzzle solving under pressure, but it really lacks any type of replay value. So my advice is just wait until the game is about 50 to 75% off. And that's my review of 5 minutes to self-destruction. If you got this far, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a little comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey guys, Sausage here. Ever wonder what it's like to survive a 90s office with only a pager and mild existential dread? Welcome to Pager, a 1-bit horror game where humor, jump scares, and corporate madness collide. You're a new employee in a 1990s office, and that's it. That's basically all you know going in. There is some story, but it's obtuse and tricky to follow. You have to piece together small crumbs on your own. World building exists, but it's subtle. Some clickable computers give text logs, but the 1-bit graphics make them a little hard to read. The gameplay is fine, it's not good, it's not bad, it's just fine. Your job is to traverse 60 floors, each with a unique task. I say task because the term minigame may be a little generous. Some tasks are clear and easy, while others make me turn the game off, walk away, and just come back later. Honestly though, those are few and far between, so if you're worried about really difficult puzzles, there's not really a bunch of them. Like I said, they're just a bunch of little tiny tasks. The floor progression involves connecting nodes, evoking a data refining feel similar to Severance. I know it's not quite like data refining, but it's got that vibe to it. If you're thinking, sausage, that sounds like a stretch. Well, the Steam page even says Severance, and there's even a floor that is definitely Severance themed.
Yeah, the egg bar is coveted as fuck.
Anyway, horror is present, but it's sparse. The jump scares show up roughly once every 10 levels, I feel like, so it's like sprinkled with horror rather than the whole game being centered around that theme. Moving on to the graphics, its 1-bit 3-dimensional graphics are unique, giving the game a distinct look, and it immediately set apart from most other games I've seen. Now, the graphics and art does take a little bit of time to get used to, and I recommend maxing out your field of view because it's just easier to see that way. There are some creative customization options where you can add a glow effect or you can change certain themes, such as this Obra Dinn theme or this Game Boy theme. Overall, it's weird, it's charming, and the surreal vibe makes the entire game just visually interesting. Lastly, let's talk about the time. Pager costs $10 US. It took me about an hour and a half to complete, and I earned 4 of the 7 achievements. It is possible that Pager has some alternate endings suggested by the 3 achievements I have yet to unlock, but I think the replay value is quite limited. With all of that said, Pager earns a rating of 6.8 sausages out of 10. Pager is a quirky, atmospheric office horror experience. The story is obtuse, the world building is subtle, and not always easy to read. The game has some sparse horror elements and some quirky office tasks that create a unique vibe, but the replay value just isn't there. Pager nails the weird offbeat office horror, but it's short, obtuse, and not hugely replayable. 2 things that could increase the score immediately would be dropping the price tag, as well as making the text on the computers just a little more readable. I think by doing that, the developer would be respecting the player's time and their money. But until then, I think I can only recommend this game when it's about 50% off. The game definitely has potential, but it's just not quite there yet. And that's my review of Pager. If you got this far, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a little comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. Hey, what's going on everybody? Sausage here. Today we're reviewing Hypermarket Simulator, a game that puts you in charge of running your very own supermarket. Think Walmart, but with you calling the shots. From stocking shelves to managing customers, it promises a full-on retail experience, but does it actually deliver? Let's talk about that. So, the beginning of the game, it's all about you being a cashier until you can purchase upgrades. These upgrades include hiring workers, or self-checkout kiosks, and even a scan gun. Once these upgrades have been purchased, the game becomes more about managing stock than anything else, really. There were a few game-breaking bugs, such as the game freezing up on me at one point, or a customer getting stuck in place, so I couldn't close the store because they couldn't leave, but they were few and far between. However, since they are game-breaking, I do find it important to share. Lastly, I want to mention a weird decision that the developer went with is that you can hire workers to come help you at the store, and these workers, all they do is stock shelves. They don't actually order things, they don't hop on any registers, so they are helpful, but you must rehire them each and every day. It's not necessarily a bad decision, it's just kinda weird. If it were me, if I were the developer, I'd make the workers, or I guess I would call them employees, a one-time purchase, and then tier the cost of those workers to hire them, and the higher the tier, the faster they would work, but again, they would also cost more. So, like I said, it's not necessarily a bad choice, it's just kinda weird. Let's move on to the graphics and art. From a distance, everything looks pretty good. However, once you get close and you look at the models, especially the people, you'll notice that they look like they were ripped straight from 7th gen consoles like the Xbox 360 or PS3. The only other thing I want to talk about with graphics and art is that the game uses a lot of AI images. Basically, every upgrade icon looks like it's AI generated. I know that many people are against AI images in games, so I felt that this was an important topic to share. Lastly, I want to talk about the time. Hypermarket Simulator costs $15 US, and I put in about 15 hours into the game. However, I only completed about half the game. With all of that said, so I was recording some gameplay for the video, and as I was doing it, I encountered some bugs that I haven't seen before. I had 4 of my 6 or 8 employees, I think it's closer to 8, not a big deal, but I had 4 of them bug out. They just couldn't put things on the shelves. I don't know if they were in like too close proximity. I don't know what the issue was, but 2 of them would get together and then they just wouldn't stock the shelves. The other 4, they had a bug with their graphically, they weren't carrying the boxes correctly. They were walking, their models were walking, and the boxes were just floating in front of them. That bug isn't a big deal, but the ones where they couldn't stock the shelves, that's a big deal. I'm not going to change the rating of the game. I'm still going to keep it the same, but I felt like this was kind of important to show you guys. These are some big bugs. I don't know if this was from a recent update and it just kind of happened, or luck of the draw. I don't know what the issue was, but again, you guys should see this. Anyway, let's get back to the review. Hypermarket Simulator earns a sausage rating of 6.4 sausages out of 10. To be completely honest, the gameplay is pretty boring at first, but once you hire your first worker and you purchase some upgrades, the game will take off. Unfortunately, the game goes from cashier simulator to stocking simulator. The game would be a bit more fun if there were goals with rewards or different paths or options to pick from to add customization to the gameplay. There is near unlimited customization options because of the different types of shelves and where you can place items, but the customization feels as wide as an ocean but as deep as a puddle. If the dev could offer more customization options or quests with rewards, it would make the gameplay dramatically more engaging. One odd choice that the developer went with was being required to hire your staff every single day rather than a one and done purchase. It isn't a big deal necessarily, but it could come off as annoying to some since you need to rehire them every day. I did hear a rumor that there would be a break room update where your hired workers could go take breaks, but the work days are so short, I just don't know how that would work. So that might require a big rework of the game as a whole, but again, it's just a rumor. I just thought it would be important to share. The graphics and art isn't bad, but the AI images can be make or break for some people. You know who you are. If you don't mind AI images, that's not going to stop you from playing this game. If you hate AI images because it takes away from, creators, you're not going to play this game. It's pretty cut and dry. You'll definitely get your money's worth out of this game, as you can easily put 30 hours into the game, and I'm pretty sure the dev is still regularly adding updates, so even if you buy every upgrade, there's probably more to come. Overall, the game has potential, but at the time of this review, it just isn't quite there yet. If the dev could replace the AI art, add something like quests, I could see this game earning a score of over 7, but as it sits right now, it's just not there yet. My advice? Either buy this game when it's about 30 to 40% off, or wait until more updates and hope the developer can introduce these changes. And that's my review of Hypermarket Simulator. If you got this far, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a little comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally. I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. What's going on, everybody? Sausage here. Back to Hearth looks cozy on the surface, restoring homes in a quiet Ukrainian village, warm autumn colors, and simple puzzles, but after playing through it, I found it's not quite as comforting as it seems. Between some odd design choices, a short runtime, and a price tag that feels a little steep, this one lands just a bit below average. Let's talk about that. In Back to Hearth, the premise is clear. There's a calamity that strikes a quiet Ukrainian village, and your job is to restore the houses so villagers will return. It's simple, but it's a serviceable story. It gets the job done. Now, it might be a possible allegory for the war in Ukraine, though I'm not entirely certain about that one. Moving on to the gameplay, the structure is that there's instanced areas where you fix up the houses in the land, and there's objectives that include small puzzles like repairing doors or weeding gardens. You have to click to complete most puzzles, but there are some puzzles where you have to draw symbols. The symbols might be letters of the Ukrainian alphabet, but again, I'm not entirely sure. I do have one small gripe with one particular puzzle. For this puzzle, there was a note on a bedstand that said there was a key on the back wall of the stable. Well, the stable is locked up, so I can't get in there. I tried looking through the windows, I tried running around other places to see if there was something I could do. Well, the solution to this puzzle was that one of the doors on the stable was pried open a little bit, and you needed to use the pitchfork to pull the hay out from behind the door, and then the key would spawn on the outside of the stable. Most other puzzles made sense in that you had to get a hammer to fix this, and then you could grab that to go do this. This puzzle is the one puzzle in the entire game that just did not make any sense. Maybe I'm just fixated on this puzzle, but it really broke the immersion. Overall, the gameplay is simple, it's tame, it's almost cozy, but there's a heavy melancholic overtone to it. Moving on to the graphics and art, the style sits somewhere between PS1 and PS2. I can't really place it. It's not bad, it's just a little odd, or maybe even hard to categorize. I will say that the autumn settings are incredible, with all of the oranges and yellows and browns and a little bit of red. It's really nice. Lastly, let's talk about the time. Back to Hearth costs $4. I beat it in just about an hour, and I earned 9 of the 16 achievements. With all of that said, Back to Hearth earns a sausage rating of 6.8 sausages out of 10. The story is fine, but it's not remarkable. The graphics aren't bad, but they may feel flat or maybe even uninteresting to some. Now, the gameplay and the pricing, that needs a little bit of polish. First, fix the confusing stable hay behind the door puzzle. That one just doesn't make sense. I don't know why they thought that would be a clever puzzle. I was just annoyed by it. Next, the game says that it's a big village, but each house is instanced in its own area, which again kind of breaks the immersion. What I would have liked is one big area with all the different houses in it, so you get to play the entire village rather than one individual house with each different instance. On top of that, maybe after you complete a house and the villagers move back in, maybe make those villagers permanent residents, permanent NPCs, and then you can go talk to them for extra story dialogue. I think if the developers went with one big village map rather than a handful of instance houses, it'd make the game feel more alive, especially if you could add NPCs that you could interact with after you're done repairing the houses. It would just make the game feel completely different, but in a good way. As for the price, $4 just feels steep for only an hour of play with little replay value. My recommendation would be to wait until this game is about 50 to 75% off. And that's my review of Back to Hearth. If you got this far, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a little comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally. I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. What's going on, everybody? Sausage here. Have you ever played a horror game where nothing actually chases you, but you still feel watched the entire time? That's Floors, a procedurally generated liminal space game that wants to make you paranoid without lifting a finger. But does quiet dread really hold up when you realize you're never actually in danger? Let's talk about that. So, Floors is all about atmosphere. You explore endless empty rooms trying to descend to the first floor and escape. There is an entity that follows you, but it doesn't chase you. It just appears behind you, watching, that sort of thing. It can't even hurt you unless you basically walk right up and kiss it on the mouth. As for all the different doors, you'll find a bunch of them with numbers, but those numbers don't really seem to mean anything. Some open, some don't, and there's no keys. So the entire mechanic about opening doors is just completely random. There are also some collectible documents, kind of like in that Slender Man game that came out in... Anyway, as far as I can tell, they don't really do anything. The game also says that it tracks your microphone, so if you make a noise, the entity should react more often, which that's a cool idea, but when the entity doesn't actually do anything, that fear kind of fizzles out pretty fast. There are some creepy sounds, such as a woman screaming, or children's toys being activated, or little audio stingers here and there, but every time I tried to follow them, the doors were locked, so I don't know if they actually lead anywhere. It just feels like a missed opportunity. Next, let's talk about the graphics and art. The visuals go for a retro VHS look with heavy static and heavy fuzz, and it nails that aesthetic, but honestly, it nails it a little too well. It isn't that it's necessarily distracting, but it's just so heavy that I can't help but not look at it. The game also advertises some symbolic imagery such as demonic symbols and cryptic words, but they pop up so quickly that you can't even really read them, so it's more confusing and annoying than creepy. As for the environment, it goes for an office vibe, but it ends up feeling more like random empty rooms. And as for the entity, well, it's business casual. It's like your boss caught you sneaking out early rather than finishing your TPS reports.
We have sort of a problem here. Apparently didn't put one of the new cover sheets on your TPS. Did you see the memo about this? Make sure you do that from now on. That would be great.
Lastly, let's talk about the time and value. Floors costs $4 US on Steam, and I finished it in about 30 minutes while earning 3 of the 5 achievements. With all of that said, Floors earns a rating of 6.4 sausages out of 10. Floors has potential. The concept is cool, it's a slow, watchful horror game without jump scares, but right now, it just feels undercooked. The exploration doesn't lead anywhere, the scares lose their edge once you realize nothing can really happen, and the visuals lean a bit too hard into the fuzz filter. Technically, there's replay value if you want to hunt down each document on all 10 levels or grab the last 2 achievements, but honestly, I don't feel any real desire to go back. Floors hasn't been updated since December 2024, so unless you catch it on a heavy discount like 50 or even 75% off, I can't really recommend it. But still, if you're into weird liminal horror and you don't mind a short, slow burn, Floors might be worth checking out. So, it's a little creepy, it's a little quiet, and it's a little confused. And that's my review of Floors. If you like this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a little comment below telling me what's the creepiest nothing's actually happening game that you've ever played. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm gonna cut my review here. Mahoney out. Ooh, what's up everybody? Sausage here. Today we're diving into Passenger 3, a horror game that drops you into the lonely, eerie world of a third shift bus station. With retro PS1 style graphics, it's got that nostalgic creep factor, but does the game's atmosphere and gameplay live up to the late night chills? Let's talk about that. So, in Passenger 23, you're a student who starts a new job as a third shift bus station cashier. This bus stop is located near an accident that took place about 10 years ago, killing 22 passengers, and the 23rd passenger went missing, but they were never found. Overall, it isn't a bad story, it's quite simple and it's to the point. There were a few story elements here and there that didn't really click for me, but in the grand scheme of the entire game, it wasn't really a big deal. Moving on to the gameplay, as a third shift cashier at this bus stop, your main responsibilities are to pick up the trash of customers because apparently they were raised to live like animals, and to sweep the floors of dirt after they leave. During the visits, however, you'll end up playing as a cashier, which isn't hard, you're just required to scan items, and then you also have to press a button to let people use the restroom. This mechanic is simulating the process of buying a token and then using the token to use the public restroom. I think that might be a unique thing to certain European countries, as this game is playable in both English and Turkish, and so if there are any Turkish people watching, leave a comment below about whether this is accurate or not. Anyway, occasionally throughout the night, the power will go out, and so you'll need to walk around back to flip the power back on by playing a small little minigame, but it's not that difficult. Being a horror game, there are some jump scares, but they're not too bad. I absolutely hate jump scares, so if I can handle these, then there'll be no problem for most other people, I would imagine. As for the graphics and art, it's got your typical PS1 vibes. It isn't good, and it isn't necessarily bad either. The game just looks kind of grungy and gross due to the color palette mostly, but PS1 styled horror games have become popular over the past couple years, and so this is one of those games where visually, you'll know immediately if you like it or not. Personally, I liked it. I thought it looked pretty good. It almost has a cozy feel because it's in the middle of winter, but it is a horror game. Now, quickly, I do want to cover the soundtrack. For the most part, the game is silent, which definitely helps build the atmosphere of isolation, but when there is sound or music, it definitely has that unsettling vibe to it. It's really nice. Lastly, let's talk about the time. Passenger 23 costs $2 on Steam, and I got just under 45 minutes of gameplay out of it. With all of that said, Passenger 23 earns a rating of 7 sausages out of 10. Passenger 23 is in every sense average, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a short game with an average story. The game could have been stretched to be a little bit longer maybe by adding more mechanics, or maybe by adding more NPCs with dialogue. The story also wasn't bad by any means either. I just think that they should have kept it in the oven for a little bit longer. It's kind of like a pizza. It can be fully cooked with a golden brown crust, but it just tastes a little bit better with those slightly burnt spots on it. This game could have benefited from those slightly burnt spots, but it's still pretty good. As for the gameplay, like I said, it isn't bad, it could have just used a couple extra mechanics. The jump scares aren't that bad either, which I personally am happy for since I hate jump scares, but I'll be honest, maybe it was due to the power going out, but I kept thinking, wouldn't it be funny if the hash-slinging slasher showed up? The price isn't bad. It's $2 for a game I got 45 minutes out of. Ultimately, I wouldn't really blame you for wanting to get it at maybe 25 or 50% off either, but it is only $2, so it's not really going to break the bank anyway. And that's my review of Passenger 23. If you got this far, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a little comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link for everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. What's going on, everybody? Sausage here. Have you ever wanted to feel like a paranoid night guard spying on a family through grainy cameras at night? Welcome to 8 AM, an anomaly detection game where your only goal is to survive until morning. But is it creepy fun, or is it just boring surveillance? Let's talk about that. So let's start with the gameplay. 8 AM takes the anomaly detection formula that we've seen before, but instead of walking through empty hallways, you're spying on a family through security cameras. It's almost got a Five Nights at Freddy's vibe to it. There's over 160 anomalies to spot, which sounds insane, right? Tons of replay value, but the real question is it worth playing through all 160 plus? So it's your typical anomaly detection game, but here's how it works. You start at midnight rather than level 0, and if you spot an anomaly, the clock jumps forward, such as 1 AM, 2 AM, 3 AM, so on. But if you miss one, you're sent all the way back to midnight, which is like level 0. At first, the anomalies feel pretty obvious, such as the dad might be standing in front of the bed, or the mom might be hanging out in the bathroom, a stranger chilling in the crib room, you know, pretty typical stuff. But once you hit around anomaly 30, that's when the anomalies start getting tricky, a little clever, a little more difficult to spot. There are jump scares, but you can toggle them on and off. But here's the weird part. As far as I could tell, they only happen outside of the cameras, never inside. So if you're looking through the cameras, you won't see a jump scare. But if you exit out of those cameras to choose whether there's an anomaly or not, because it's kind of like a computer station, if you back out, that's when the jump scares happen. Do I think it's a missed opportunity that there's no jump scares in the CCTV cameras? Absolutely. Still, there are little auditory touches like doors creaking, glasses shattering, or whispers in your ear that keep the atmosphere tense without going full cheap scare. Now, the graphics, not exactly amazing. The models are stiff, nothing groundbreaking, but the aesthetic, that's where 8 AM shines. Watching a family through grainy CCTV feels way more unsettling than just walking around empty rooms. That vibe alone is what pulled me into this game. Lastly, let's talk about the time and the value. 8 AM costs $4 on Steam. I beat it 5 times in under an hour, and I got 2 of the 3 achievements. The first few runs might take maybe 5 to 10 minutes each, since the anomalies are pretty obvious, they're pretty simple, but later on, they're harder to spot, so it might take longer to complete each run. But the loop never changes. It's the same handful of cameras over and over and over. So with all of that said, 8 AM earns a rating of 7 sausages out of 10. The security camera gimmick hooked me right away, but I'll be honest, it wore thin pretty fast. The jump scares felt cheap, and not using the cameras for scares, that is a huge missed opportunity. Again, maybe I just didn't get far enough to experience those, but in the hour that I played, they just weren't in the cameras. With that said though, I could see the right person sinking hours into this anomaly hunting game, but it just wasn't enough to keep me hooked personally. So my recommendation would be to wait until the game is about half off. And that's 8 AM. It's a creepy concept, it's got solid atmosphere, but it's not quite the scare fest I was expecting. So I'll leave you guys with one question. Would you spend the night spying through CCTV cameras, or is this one an easy skip? Let me know in the comments below. If you got this far, consider liking and subscribing. I also stream on Twitch occasionally. I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm gonna cut my review here. Mahoney out. What's going on, everybody? Sausage here. Picture this. You're a fallen angel, tossed into hell, but instead of fire and brimstone, you get fluorescent lighting and mandatory coffee breaks. This is Red Tape, a game where eternal damnation looks suspiciously like a 9 to 5. So, what's the deal with the celestial mix-up? Why are you here, and what's actually going on? Let's talk about that. So, you play as a fallen angel, cast down to hell, but as it turns out, hell isn't fire and brimstone. It's actually cubicles, copy machines, and soul-sucking bureaucracy. After arriving in hell, you determine that there must have been some sort of mistake because you never betrayed God, and you just want to clear up this misunderstanding so you can go back to heaven. So you're just trying to talk to the right people, or demons, technically, to prove your innocence. No one believes you, of course, and so you're sent on these little fetch quests in an attempt to talk to different supervisors so that you can straighten everything out and leave. But as you play, as you go deeper, you realize something's off. There's a bigger mystery buried under all that paperwork. And that's where the game really shines. It hooks you in with comedy, but then starts dropping hints that not everything is as it seems. As for the gameplay, think of it as a narrative-driven walking sim that also has a fetch quest element to it. This demon wants something, so you go talk to a different demon who needs you to find an item, so you rinse and repeat, and that's the entire game. It sounds repetitive, and it kind of is, but there's a charm to it. You're kind of caught in this ridiculous loop that honestly fits the setting perfectly. I will say the game doesn't hold your hand, there's no waypoints, there's no glowing arrows, it's just a quest tab in your own brain. For example, at one point I needed blood for a vampire, but I thought, where do you get blood in hell? Well, turns out it's in a water cooler, you know, the red ones, naturally. The game forces you to think outside the box, and honestly, that made me appreciate the design a little bit more. But then the ending. Oh boy. Out of nowhere, the game throws a boss fight at you, and it's inside of a courtroom, and it's a platformer where you're literally supplying evidence mid-trial. It's not hard, but man, it caught me completely off guard. Like, did the walking sim just turn into a Phoenix Wright meets Mario? It wasn't really that difficult, but it was completely out of the blue and unexpected. Moving on to the graphics and art, the game nails a PS1 style 3D environment perfectly with low poly, grainy textures and that retro charm. But the kicker? Every character is a 2D cutout of a real person's photo. It's weird, it's unique, and somehow it just works.
It just works.
You've probably seen other games try this style, but Red Tape pulls it off better than most. It feels like you're stuck in a corporate fever dream directed by David Lynch, and that's a compliment. Lastly, let's talk about the time, the price, the value. Red Tape costs $6 on Steam, and it took me just over 2 hours to beat. I grabbed 12 of the 14 achievements, and from what I can tell, the other 2 probably won't affect the story, so unless you're a 100% completionist, don't sweat it, you've probably seen the whole thing. With all of that said, Red Tape earns a sausage rating of 7.8 sausages out of 10. The story is funny, the world is absurd, and the mystery actually had me invested by the end. The fetch quest loop does start to wear thin about 3/4 of the way through, but honestly, it doesn't overstay its welcome. I will say that the game has some minor plot holes, but the dev turned those plot holes into jokes, and I respect that. Such as one character hands you an important item and says, "I've been holding onto this for no reason, you can have it." Does that make sense? Nope. Is it funny? Absolutely. It's creative, it's bizarre, and it knows exactly what it's doing. I will say that if the game were $4 or $5, it would feel like a sweet spot, but even at full price, it's honestly not a bad deal, only a couple extra dollars, so if you really want to wait for a sale, maybe wait until it's about 25% off, but again, $6, a little bit high, but not going to break the bank. If you like story-driven indie games with weird humor and retro vibes, well, this one's worth clocking in for. If you've played this game before, let me know what your thoughts are, and if you haven't, well, don't forget to fill out your forms before descending. And that's my review of Red Tape. If you got this far, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a little comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. What's going on, everybody? Sausage here. Have you ever walked into a place that feels too quiet, like something terrible happened but no one talks about it? That's Greenhouse, a walking sim that starts peaceful and quickly turns into something much, much darker. Oh, and fair warning, this review will contain story spoilers. If you want to avoid the story being spoiled, just go to this time on the screen here. I've got the video broken down into different chapters too, so it's easy to skip ahead. Just jump to the gameplay portion of the video if you don't want spoilers, and I'll see you in a bit. So, the story. You start the game off at a greenhouse that's been shut down after a murder. The groundskeeper? Missing. Gone. Vanished. As you explore, you start piecing together clues and psychic visions that reveal what really went down. Turns out, this wasn't just a greenhouse, it was actually a secret research facility trying to reverse the aging process. And surprise, surprise, when you try to play God, well, things don't usually work out. The result? The missing groundskeeper becomes the monster of the story. Now let's talk about the gameplay. Greenhouse is basically a slow burn walking simulator with light puzzle solving and environmental storytelling in a liminal world. You'll explore empty hallways, overgrown rooms, and eerie silence, all while collecting clues and photos of each new area you find. Most of the puzzles revolve around finding puzzle pieces that are basically keys shaped like a sun, a leaf, and flowing water. You then put all three pieces into a door to unlock the next area. There's also this clever perspective puzzle that feels straight out of Superliminal, where you must align objects such as staircases until the image clicks. Sometimes these types of puzzles can be finicky, but the devs must have put in a lot of work with this mechanic because I had absolutely zero issues with these puzzles. But here's what really makes the game cool. You can customize your experience. There are a few toggleable options in the settings, such as the groundskeeper, ghosts, insects, and jump scares, and they can all be toggled individually. You want a full-on horror mode with everything turned on? Go for it. You don't like bugs, but you still want everything else? Sure. You want a purely chill exploration game? Easy. Done. I love that the devs let you decide just how scary you want the game to be. And there's also a neat little weather mechanic as well, where you can pick up umbrellas, beach balls, or sunglasses to literally change the weather. Make it rain with the umbrella, or you can make it sunny and warm with the beach ball. It's whatever fits your vibe. Combine that with the physics puzzles, the foliage and the water, and the open world layout with no loading screens, just seamless wandering, and it's not surprising that it's so immersive, but rather the depth of the immersion is what got me. Now, let's talk about the graphics and art. This game is beautifully liminal. When people hear liminal, they usually think unsettling, back rooms, pool rooms, and yeah, that stuff's in here, but it's not overdone. There are whole sections of the game that offer the back rooms and pool rooms, but it feels like it was placed in here for fun rather than as a full-on story element. Anyway, you've got spaces that feel unsettling, but also some that feel weirdly comforting, such as the contrast between the lush greenhouse plants and the brutalist concrete corridors. It perfectly nails the unsettling yet comfortable vibe. The greenhouse sections look alive, while the brutalist concrete interiors hit that cold, sterile vibe perfectly. Personally, I'm one of those people who finds peace in liminal spaces, and Greenhouse nails that feeling almost perfectly to me. Lastly, I'm going to talk about the time, or how long it takes to beat the game compared to the price tag. Greenhouse costs $8 US on Steam. I got about an hour and a half out of it, but I only earned one of the 7 achievements. With all of that said, Greenhouse earns a rating of 8 sausages out of 10. So I actually played the Greenhouse demo when it first came out, and then a few months later I was sent a free Steam key to give a little bit of playtesting feedback, and back then, I'll admit, I didn't totally get it. Like, I understood it, and I definitely enjoyed the game, but I didn't feel it, if that makes sense. Well, I came back to it so I could record footage for this game review, and it finally clicked. It wasn't the story or the gameplay I didn't understand, it was the vibe. I knew it was meant to be liminal, I just didn't feel it. But now, I definitely do. The puzzles aren't the main focus, the vibe is. It's about that eerie comfort, that sense of being somewhere familiar but off. It's about the atmosphere, the sense of peaceful eeriness that sits between calm and dread. The story's simple, sure, but it works. The visuals carry it, and the customization gives it some replayability. It's short and you're able to finish it in one sitting if you want. It's weird, and it's absolutely worth experiencing, especially if you love that liminal peaceful horror vibe. Could it be cheaper? Sure, but here's the thing. There's replay value if you like both peaceful walking sims and horror themed ones as well. There's even a collectible photo book you can fill out and 7 achievements if you're into completing games. So, if you take your time and soak it all in, you can easily push it to 2 hours or maybe even more. And that's my review of Greenhouse. If you got this far, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a little comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally. I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. What's going on, everybody? Sausage here. What if being a mailman on a tiny island sounded cozy, but actually it just kind of felt empty? Let's talk about Tiny Whiny Island. Stick around, this one has some claymation vibes, kind of, some weird letters, and a whole lot of nothing. So, the story. You play as Pete. Pete got a mail in the letter saying, hey, you should come home to the island so that you can be our mailman because we don't have a mailman. And that's basically the whole plot. There are a couple side stories that pop up, such as 2 brothers fighting over a winery, or a missing girl that you find hiding in a bush, but resolving them doesn't really change anything. Have you ever finished a quest and thought, wait, that's it? Yeah, this story doesn't really dig deep. Moving on to the gameplay, it's pretty minimal and it starts cozy, but it turns stale pretty quickly, like in just 30 minutes. It's kind of a big island, but there's barely any people on it. On the south side of the island, there's a town. On the east and west, there is a forest and a lighthouse, respectively, and then the entire north side just basically exists. There's not really anything back there. Being the island mailman, you can commit a federal offense if you want to read the recipient's mail, which is honestly pretty funny at first, such as one of the letters talking about an extended car warranty, even though there's no cars on the island. But the letters just repeat, the jokes kind of fizzle out pretty quickly, and the content dries up fast. What I mean is that the joke about the extended car warranty, the first letter I opened had that, and then the second. And maybe not the third, but probably the fourth. My point is that there's not many jokes and they just repeat. The game does have collectibles in the forms of mushrooms and paper airplanes. I found all 26 mushrooms, and it seems like the only thing that did was unlock an achievement. There are 7 paper airplanes and I only found 6, but I gave up after running around the island for about an hour playing the rest of the game, and I just kind of thought to myself, if I found the 26 mushrooms and that did nothing, I'm pretty sure finding the airplanes is also going to do nothing. So if the collectibles don't do anything, then what's the point in collecting them? The game does recommend using a controller, but honestly, I went back and replayed a little bit after I beat the game using a mouse and keyboard, and it felt just as good, maybe if not better. It's got your traditional mapping, WASD to move and spacebar to jump. It just didn't feel any worse. Here's what the gameplay does nail though. It's an absolutely cozy vibe, zero pressure, just wandering. My first day on the island, which isn't even timed, you just go back to the post office when you're done, but on that first day, I spent the entire time just going around getting collectibles, and I kind of enjoyed it. But again, you don't get anything for them, and the island is so big, yet so empty, that after collecting most of them, you're just kind of wandering around aimlessly. Yes, there's a goal of delivering letters, but again, that's it. Moving on to the graphics and art, this is the best part of the game, hands down. It's made in Unreal Engine, which makes everything look polished and warm, and the characters almost look like smooth claymation, I think. I don't know if that's the right term, but the point is that they look super cozy. But like I said, even the beautiful art can't hide how empty the island feels. Moving on to the time or the price tag, Tiny Whiny Island costs $4. I earned about 8 of the 10 achievements, and I got just over an hour of gameplay out of it. With all of that said, Tiny Whiny Island earns a sausage rating of 6 sausages out of 10. Are the vibes cozy? Absolutely. But what about the story? Shallow. And the collectibles? Pointless. And the world? It's pretty, but it's empty. Tiny Whiny Island has heart, but it needs more island, I guess. Honestly, this game should have only been $2, so I can only really recommend it if you're going to get it at least 50% off. And that's my review of Tiny Whiny Island. If you got this far, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a little comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally. I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. What's going on, everybody? Sausage here. What if you strapped a mining operation onto a train and then watched that train slowly learn to play the game for you? Today, we're talking Trainatic, an indie incremental battler that's exactly as weird as it sounds. So, is it worth your time? Let's break it down. Trainatic starts as an incremental battler where you upgrade train cars to mine resources. But I'll be honest, the first hour or so is a little bit of a slog. You're making progress, but it just doesn't feel like you're making progress. Not yet. Then, after you beat the first level, the game suddenly just kind of wakes up. You go to a new level or a new biome, there's new resources, and what's even cooler is that you can craft higher tier resources by combining those new resources with your old ones. But after a while, you kind of hit a plateau, you kind of stagnate a little bit. What I mean is that your train can get so strong that you can go to an old biome to collect older resources, and then you can just kind of walk away for 5 minutes and come back after it's done. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but if you want something more hands-on, well, you might be disappointed. Then, around the 5-hour mark, the game basically automates itself. My only job was switching levels or checking menus, which you can imagine got pretty boring. Once I hit that plateau, I was kind of wondering if there would be a prestige mode or something to reset my progress that would then add buffs or perks to keep things interesting, but as far as I can tell, that's not a mechanic in the game. In my experience, the last few hours were just grinding the final level, and I wasn't sure if I missed some sort of mechanic or if it wasn't explained well, and if I didn't miss anything, which I don't think it did, then that just adds to the slog that it kinda turned into. Eventually, I got tired of the grind, and I replaced pretty much everything on my train with just weapons, and I brute forced the ending, and then I unlocked some extra content, but that extra content was basically just an ever-increasing damage check, nothing more. When you beat the game, you can go back to old levels, and you can replay them on an ever-increasing difficulty, and you can unlock more perks for your perk tree, but again, it was just basically a damage check. There was nothing else to it. Moving on to the graphics and art, the game has a clean 8-bit vibe with colors that really pop, especially in my favorite level, the caverns. Trainatic is visually pleasant for sure, but nothing that really stands out. What I mean is that it's not bad, but it's not great, you know, it just kind of exists, and that's okay. Next, let's talk about the soundtrack. Trainatic has a lo-fi soundtrack, and at first, I loved it. But after about an hour, it does start to feel a little bit stale. The upside is that it doesn't get annoying, you just kind of tune it out. I decided to take a break after playing the game for about 2 hours, and I came back a little later, and honestly, the break helped. It made the music feel fresh again. Lastly, let's talk about the time or the price tag. Trainatic costs $6 on Steam. I basically beat the game in about 8 hours, and I grabbed 19 of the 22 achievements. You could squeeze it down to about 6 hours if you wanted to speedrun it though. With all of that said, Trainatic earns a rating of 7 sausages out of 10. Trainatic is, in every sense, average. The gameplay is fine, but it's missing some depth, such as a prestige system. It would have added so much more replayability. The graphics, they're good, but they're not really memorable either. The soundtrack is cozy, but it becomes repetitive, and the price tag, it's fair, sitting at $6, though I wouldn't really blame you if you wanted to wait for a small sale like 10% off either. So again, Trainatic is not bad, but it's not great either, it's just Trainatic. And that's my review of Trainatic. If you got this far, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a little comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally. I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out. What's going on, everybody? Sausage here. Have you ever played a game that looks incredible until you realize you've seen the whole world in about 3 rooms? Today we're checking out A Doctor's Term, a short sci-fi walking sim about working in a very suspicious Ministry of Health. Let's see if this 30-minute shift is worth clocking in for. So, the story. You play as Dr. Vincent Batten, the new guy at a government facility that immediately feels wrong. New security measures, strange notes, implied violence, there's a lot of potential here. But the story moves fast, almost too fast to care about the stakes. It's got a good premise, but a rushed execution. It feels kind of like you just got dropped into the middle of a crisis, but nobody gave you a manual on what to do. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. But maybe the gameplay makes up for it, right? Well, it's a classic walking sim. Move to point A, press the E button, listen to some dialogue, move to point B, rinse and repeat. The game does have some choices matter moments, but they don't change how the moment to moments feel. And because the story is so rushed, the gameplay just kinda ends up feeling more like errands rather than decisions. It's functional, yeah, but is it engaging? Kinda. Anyway, let's talk about the part that actually impressed me, the graphics and art. Right off the bat, you'll notice the brutalist concrete mixed with lush green overgrowth, and it's genuinely beautiful in some spots. The art direction in this game is the absolute standout. But you only really see it in a few rooms, and the models get rough if you get a little bit too close. It's kind of like getting an appetizer at a restaurant that's incredible, but then the restaurant closes before the entree even arrives. So what about the value? How much game do you actually get? Well, A Doctor's Term costs $4 on Steam. It took me about 30 minutes to finish it, but there is at least one alternate ending, so maybe an hour total if you replay it. So is it worth it? Well, that depends. If you love short narrative experiments, maybe. For everyone else, probably wait until the 50% off sale. Anyway, let's wrap this up. A Doctor's Term earns a rating of 6.3 sausages out of 10. The game has a cool atmosphere and great visuals and a strong concept, but the pacing and the shallow gameplay kinda hold it back. I don't want to say that it's a bad game, it's just one that feels like it ends right as it starts getting interesting. But is the game worth buying? Maybe not at full price unless you're really into bite-sized walking sims, and if you're not into walking sims, I don't know why you're here for this video anyway, but I guess what I'm saying is that don't buy this game until it's at least 50% off. And that's my review of A Doctor's Term. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a little comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally. I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, and I'm a Steam curator, so consider following me on all of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out.